This is a virtual meeting using the Zoom platform. Members of the public can view this meeting live on Channel 8 or the city's website. Live Spanish translation services are being provided for tonight's council meeting by telephone. Please dial 720-386-9023 and use code 104091*. If you're a council member, please be sure to have your video camera on and be mindful that we are streaming this meeting on Channel 8 and on our city's website. The chat function is disabled to ensure that the public can see all portions of the meeting. The city clerk is the host of the meeting, and I and our IT staff will be the co-host. Council members and panelists will be able to unmute themselves when recognized. Please mute yourself when you have finished speaking. Remember to lower your virtual hand to prevent disruptions. We have 4 presentations this evening for the study session. The first is an update on the CDBG Consolidated Plan for 2021 through 2025. I'd like to invite Cheryl Steinberg, CDBG Coordinator, to introduce the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time tonight. And let me share the screen here. Let me find it. All righty. And all righty. Can everyone see it all right?
We can't see it yet, Cheryl, no.
Okay, let me see what's wrong. And sorry about this. It's not presenting on my screen.
Cheryl, if necessary, we can have Jordan run it and you can just let us know when to move to the next slide.
We may. Let's try this one.
There we go.
Did we get it? All righty. All righty. It was showing the wrong thing. So tonight, we are going to be talking to you about the 2021 Annual Action Plan. And we will be covering the Con Plan and the Annual Action Plan both. With me today is Mosaic Community Planning, our consultant, Jeremy Gray. And Jeremy, are you on?
I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Great. And can everyone still see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Jeremy will be covering the 2021 Consolidated Plan. I'll be covering the Annual Action Plan. So Jeremy, if you'd like to start.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Mayor and members of council, for the opportunity to talk with you a little bit tonight. My name is Jeremy Gray with Mosaic Community Planning, and we have been working with the city on developing the Consolidated Plan and also the first year Annual Action Plan that goes within that. We can go to the next slide. Just to point out briefly the difference between the two. The Consolidated Plan is a 5-year plan that covers kind of overarching community goals and priorities for the city's Community Development Block Grant, CDBG funding, over the coming 5-year period. So we'll also be presenting tonight about the Annual Action Plan, the first of those 5 years under the Consolidated Plan, and the specific funding amounts and organizations that we're going to recommend would receive funding under the plan. Over the 5 years, it's about $2.1 million that the city will receive. These are federal funds from HUD. There's a third report called a CAPER, just a little plug here. At the end of each program year, Cheryl and her office conducts the CAPER. That's called the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report that follows up on the goals that were set in the Consolidated Plan and the Annual Action Plan. Some of you have been on council perhaps for a while, and you might have remembered the previous Consolidated Plan from 5 years ago. A few things have changed since then, and so I wanted to touch on just a couple of those changes from the previous plan. First of all, the city is joining the Adams County Home Consortium. I believe that's on the next slide. The Home Consortium is an opportunity for the city to receive additional funding through the HOME program. It's also another HUD grant program, specifically provides funds for affordable housing programming. The city is not large enough on its own to receive those funds, but by joining a consortium is able to participate. So this is a spectacular opportunity, a good way to bring resources to the city that weren't there originally, to focus those on affordable housing. The other one that's new is a focus on the Section 108 loan program. This is something that over this coming 5-year consolidated plan period, the city is looking to participate in this program. What it does is it allows a borrower to borrow up to 5 times the city's annual grant amount. So about $2.1 million would be the cap on that borrowing authority. And it uses this city's future CDBG allocations as collateral for that loan. Typically, when a loan like this is used, it goes into something that's going to generate some sort of program income that would then go back to repay that loan. This would be like for a larger scale investment in affordable housing or in economic development, probably some sort of gap financing to make a deal of one of those types work. And then by loaning funding into that deal, there would be resources coming back in terms of loan payments that repay the cost of the loan. 2 other things that are different. These are new planning requirements that HUD has instituted since the time of the city's last consolidated plan. And that is broadband and resilience to natural hazards. These are just 2 new things that all communities that do consolidated plans are required to look into. It requires some additional analysis of mapping, some additional consultation with stakeholders that are experts in these areas. And these 2 items are covered in this new consolidated plan that we've drafted. So the process then for developing this consolidated plan, wanted to share a little bit with you about some of the inputs that go into it. You see here a list of some of the sources of data that we consulted to put the plan together. We're relying to a great deal on American Community Survey data. There's also a special tabulation of that data that HUD receives and provides to its grantees called the CHAS, which stands for Comprehensive Housing Affordability Strategy data. We've relied on that, some other sources of public housing data as well. One of the largest sources, previous works of local research. These are other plans and study documents that the city has already invested resources in. We want to not replicate or duplicate any of that effort, but instead learn from those plans and studies and research so that we could pull the findings into this planning process. And then also public input, which we'll talk a little bit more about on the next slide, was a really big part of the planning process. And this is a really difficult year to have done that public engagement. Because we could not meet together physically in meetings during the period of time that we were pulling this plan together, we did remote stakeholder interviews. We did remote focus groups over Zoom. We did some virtual community meetings, and we set up an interactive project website at informc3.com specifically for this planning project with lots of different interactive tools, survey opportunities, a map that people can drop pins on. So lots of things that we put out there so that people could participate in the planning process. And you see here, there were 44 residents that joined a focus group. Some of those focus groups, these would be members of the Senior Commission. These would be members of Cultivando. We did a focus group with members of the Housing Authorities Board, with people experiencing homelessness. These were some of the focus groups that we held to hear directly from people who are most likely to be impacted and affected by these types of programs. 73 stakeholders joined an interview. These are typically professionals, experts in their field with a particular experience that gives them insight into the planning process. Many staff members from the city were part of one of those interviews. Also lots of nonprofit executives and people of that type as well. We had 2 public meetings devoted specifically to this plan. Between the 2, we had 7 people attend those meetings. And then we had, I mentioned the project website, which we had 208 visitors to. And resulting from all of that input, you see here a list of the top 18 items that were raised in all of those, whether it would be interviews or stakeholder groups. The leftmost column you see in this table, IC3, that's the website, so things that our project website cited, and the number of votes or the number of times that it came up in those different interactions. So topping this list here came up more than anything else, and by quite a margin, was a need for a community resource navigators. Lots of people talked about the need. There are resources that people know that there are resources out there. They're not sure exactly where they are, how to access them, who's eligible for them. And so some sort of guidance to help people through those sorts of questions that they might have. Within this list, if we took time to really pick it apart, you will find that these all fit neatly into some categories that I'm going to come to in a minute. But so there are things like rent, mortgage, and utility assistance, affordable housing options. So there are things from the housing side. There are things here from the public services side. You see victim services, youth programs, homeless prevention, child care, senior care assistance, things like that. There are some economic development type things that are in here as well. You see job training, ESL, trade skills, new technology, and you're also going to see in this list some of the infrastructure and facilities type needs. If you look down toward the bottom, you're going to see walkability, sidewalks, trails, benches, rec centers, developing undeveloped parcels into parks and things of that sort. So then going from here a little bit more specifically into the priority needs, I believe is what comes next. We took what we heard and what we pulled out were 6 priority needs. And these, again, go with the consolidated plan. So these are going to guide the city's CDBG investments over not just this year, but the next 5 years. To be funded with your CDBG funds over those 5 years within this plan, a program or an activity would have to meet one of these priority needs. So you see those listed here. And then in the white space, we provided some examples of programs or activities that might meet those needs. Those are not exclusive. So there are many things that we could have listed on this slide that would fit into these categories, but we wanted to provide some examples to give you an idea of what is included exactly under, for instance, housing and homelessness. Public services is a really big and open category. There's a lot that you can do there. You see economic development, neighborhood stabilization, public infrastructure, facilities, and emergency response. We also asked the CDBG team, so department heads generally that met together to make funding recommendations on the CDBG program, we asked their help to prioritize those 6 needs. And here's the result of that exercise, prioritizing the needs. The way that the program is set up, there's not an opportunity for a medium level need. Needs are either high or they're low. And so given those constraints, this is how we did that. High level needs would be housing and homelessness, public services, and economic development. That high level on economic development was at least somewhat influenced by the pandemic. Thinking that small businesses their needs maybe had grown within that category as a result of COVID lockdowns and things like that. So lower priority needs, things like neighborhood stabilization, public infrastructure. I think some of the thinking there had to do with those are large and expensive projects. CDBG can add to those, but not likely the primary funding source for some of those infrastructure projects. Emergency response, we put this in the plan so that in case an emergency were to occur, you already have this priority identified in your plan. It makes it a little bit easier to reprogram funds from something to an emergency response type program, whatever that may be. However, there are going to be funds that would come in such a case like that, maybe a natural disaster. That could be used much more quickly within the community. CDBG funds would come a little bit slower. They would provide for recovery over, maybe years 2 and 3 and 4 following a natural disaster. And so that's why the team ranked that a lower priority. And then I wanted to quickly go through just the last part of this here. We're going to look at each one of those needs and then the goals within that need. So a program or an activity that you would want to fund under those needs would have to meet at least one of the goals that we're going to lay out here. These are pretty open and pretty general, and that's on purpose. We do want there to be some strategic way to track progress, but we also don't want to limit the types of things that you can fund unnecessarily. So under housing and homelessness, you can see here the two types of goals. One, providing affordable housing, and the second one is more the homelessness type goal. The next one, public services, and because this is such a diverse category, there's a lot of goals here. So it could be providing services for low and moderate income residents. It could be workforce development solutions. It could be supporting special needs populations like domestic violence victim assistance. It could be neighborhood appearance, health and safety, promoting fair housing, which is something that the city is required to do as a piece of its CDBG funding. Under economic development, just one broad goal there, providing financial and technical support to for-profit businesses. Neighborhood stabilization, improving infrastructure, appearance, health, and safety. There's a lot to that list. Public infrastructure, a couple of goals, one related to infrastructure, one related to connectivity and access, which could mean infrastructure like broadband, for instance, and emergency response, just one goal under that need relating to responding to emergencies as they may arise. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Cheryl, who is going to talk some more specifically about the action plan. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeremy. And as we've seen before, the action plans are actually where we'd like the money to go and the activities we would like to fund based on applications we received. So this year we received 13 applications for funding for the 2021 CDBG year, which doesn't start until October 1st. The team, as Jeremy mentioned, has met twice this year, and where they were able to review and score and then rank the applications. And these are the 7 criteria that we consistently use to score these applications so that we can make recommendations for activities and funding to council. So it's CDBG viability and risk assessment. So this basically is it eligible according to regulation? Is this project going to be at risk of not occurring, of not happening because of more bureaucratic reasons, not really because of ability, but simply because of the regulations. Then the second one is consistency with the consolidated plan. And here in this year, we have the unique opportunity really to use both con plans, the existing one and the one that we're presenting tonight. So were they consistent? Were these activities consistent with the consolidated plans? Then there's the overall benefit or impact to the city, the applicant's experience and ability. Are they able to get this activity off the ground? What is their track record? Are they able to manage a grant? That's federal and requires a lot of paperwork. So then the fifth one is benefits to low to moderate income residents. The sixth one is committed supplementary funding and leveraging. So have they got some skin in the game? Have they put some funds towards this project as well? And then number 7 is it in an adopted city plan or an area plan? So has the city already considered this and deemed it a good activity to solve some identified issues? So going back to that top 18 list, the applications that we are recommending for funding in the annual action plan address these community input topics, because we also did, of course, consider citizen input. So a community resource navigator is in there, homelessness assistance is in there, homelessness prevention, housing rehabilitation, school supplies and basic supplies, and then underdeveloped parks is also in there. So let's take a look at the big spreadsheet. You may recognize this from last year's, this similar layout. So this year we received $431,404. 20% of that is allowed for administration. So the balance remaining is $345,132. Now, of the total amount, the total grant amount, we can use only 15% of that for public services. That mainly is because CDBG is originally and still considers itself a very brick and mortar type funding type program. But they do allow 15% to go to public services. Typically, that is where we get the most applications. As you can see, we received, what is this here? 8 applications. So we went through those criteria and ranked the applications. And the number one that stood out was a new applicant this year, a precious child, which I'll get into the details of each of these a little later. And it provides family support. So we anticipate helping about 300 people with these funds. Then second, there's actually 2 tied for second. One is the police department's domestic violence victim support program, which you've seen before. We're proposing another 12 households be assisted with this. And the other second, tied for second, is Park and Rec's homeless outreach supplies to assist their new homeless navigator position. Then in third place is Kids in Need of Dentistry. This is a repeat applicant. They were funded last year with some COVID related funding for teledentistry. They're coming back this year for staff assistance, and the balance that we had remaining was $15,711. So that's why that figure is in there. And that then with those 4, that leaves remaining $280,421. And of those, we had 5 applicants coming in at $581,500 in request. Well, that's like public services requires some tough decisions to be made. The top ranking, scoring and ranked programs was minor home repair program. And this is coming back again, a very successful program. This would fund at least 14 additional owner-occupied rehabilitation projects. Number 2 was Park and Rec. Also, they submitted a second application to help install a fitness court somewhere in the core city, the location to be determined. And then Paint-a-thon came in third, another recognizable program where the exterior of homes are painted for seniors and disabled. So a little more detail on these. For totaling $64,711. So a precious child. You may have heard about this program. They are very well beloved and used in surrounding areas, and they're making a much stronger presence coming up here in the next year or so in Commerce City. This would help fund staff and overhead for case management for families, including housing and shelter and homelessness prevention, clothing, food, baby items, school supplies, employment help, counseling, and education. So it's really quite a wraparound program. We're recommending full funding of $15,000 for that program. Then the police department's domestic violence victim services program. Those victims in the most need and at risk of going homeless then would receive housing assistance. It can be rent or mortgage assistance, for utility assistance, safety needs like a safety phone. It could be emergency housing like a hotel. It can be relocation costs, basic needs like food. And so this is not only for the victim, but also their children or dependents. So they requested 28,000. We recommend 24. The homeless outreach supply activity, again, would partner with the new homeless navigator, and it would be basic supplies and services for the new position to meet the homeless population and to assist them based on the needs identified. And this could be things like water and food and toiletry supplies, to maybe some modest services like phone charging station, or maybe laundry service on a once in a while they don't know. They'll determine what they need and then we'll be able to approve it if it fits in the regulations. But those types of services. So Kids in Need of Dental is proposing, they came in third. And so they're proposing on-site service resource navigator. So that fits right into our #1 identified need by the public. And it's to help families deal with pediatric health services. And these health services are very varied in the Commerce City Community Campus, which I'm sure you're aware of over at the old Adams Tower. I think it's now the South Platte Tower. So in that campus, this navigator will help the kind patients with services and available facilities, not only there, which include mental assistance, orthodontic, medical, basic needs and resources, but also all the other resources available to help residents that come there. And they serve other residents besides Commerce City, but we are only helping and funding the portion of the staff needs to help our residents. So over to non-public services, the remaining balance of $280,421. We're proposing that $170,421 go to the minor home repair program. And again, this is the basic rehabbing of homes. Typically they're older homes. Probably 85% of what we've done in the past has been for seniors and disabled residents. And it's health, safety, accessibility, and energy efficiency improvements to the home. They are brought up to code. They have permits on these work that's done. And it can be things like roofing, plumbing, electrical, foundation, furnace, hot water heater, ramps, walk-in showers, all sorts of things. The next one is the fitness court from Park and Rec to help pay for that total project. They'll determine the location somewhere in the core city. They've got 4 possible sites. And it would be to help purchase and install the 38 by 38 recreational fitness court. And we're recommending full funding for them. Then the last one is the Paint-a-thon program. Probably familiar. This is where the exterior of the home is painted for seniors and disabled residents. It also includes lead-based paint testing and abatement. It includes, depending on the talent of the volunteer crew, it can also include one-time yard cleanup, ramp installation, grab bars and railing installations and the like for accessibility. So those are the proposed 7 programs that we have for council to consider and review. And the next steps that we would take after this meeting is to bring it to council at the July 19th session for adoption. And then we would need to have it submitted to HUD by August 16th. And then HUD would hopefully have the approval and contract information sent out to us by September 30th. So we may start the new year, our new 2021 year, October 1st. So are there any questions for Jeremy and I?
Does anybody on council have any questions for either Ms. Steinberg or Mr. Gray? Seeing none, we thank you both for your time. Look forward to seeing this before council at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have an update on the American Rescue Plan fund use. Would like to invite Kathy Blakeman, Deputy City Manager, to make the presentation.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Tonight we're going to talk about the American Rescue Plan. I have requested for John Borgelli, who's our management analyst, and also Teresa Wilson, who's the Deputy Finance Director, to join us in the event that there are questions. This is a relatively complex plan, and we're still in the learning phase for some of this, and so they'll be available as well to help answer any questions that you all may have as we go forward. So go ahead to the next slide. So the purpose tonight is we're going to do an overview of what the American Rescue Plan is. We're going to talk about what some of those allowable uses are that are under the plan. We're going to talk about a staff recommendation for the initial use of the funds and what that strategy would look like, which actually buys us a lot more flexibility. We'll talk about that in a moment. And of course, tonight we want to begin to get your ideas and then begin determining what some of those final fund uses might be. This is going to be a lot longer of a conversation as it pertains to the processes and the uses. And we're not going to make a lot of final determinations yet this evening. The good news is this gives you an opportunity to really start thinking about how you might want some of these funds to be expended. So the next slide, please. All right, let's give you some background information. Go ahead, John. Thank you. So there was $1.9 trillion that were put into total federal relief package funding. And of that, 350 billion are going to state and local governments. The American Rescue Plan is in response to the public health crisis and any sort of an economic hardship that was related to the crisis. So for us as a local government, Commerce City is going to receive $10.5 million, and it's going to be in 2 tranches. But there are some stipulations on what some of those allowable uses are going to be. We're going to get this money directly from the Treasury and not from the state. And much like with the CARES Act, those of us that were in the trenches, so to speak, trying to interpret what all of the government regulations were, that continued to change sometimes on a weekly basis. Much like that, we anticipate that the American Rescue Plan is going to continue to change as we go forward as well. So as those guidance changes come to us from the Treasury Department, we'll be keeping current with those. We're attending webinars. We're going to we're looking at various press releases from the Treasury. We're communicating with other agencies directly. And so we're trying to keep on top of what those rulings look like. There's no such thing at this moment yet as final rulings. They're going to continue to change. Next slide, please. So here's the timeline. March of 2021, this was signed into law. And in May, the first tranches became available. We have not yet accepted the first tranche. Our plan is to accept it in June. The second tranche is going to be available about a year from that particular date. But the catch is that all the money has to be expended with the first tranche before we can receive funding from the second tranche. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we can make that work in a way that doesn't have us in a panic to have to spend everything right off the bat for fear of then losing that second tranche. And then December of 2024, all the funds at that point will need to be expended. Next slide, please. So let's go into what the allowable uses are for these expenditures, at least as it's been outlined in the guidelines today. Okay. So the ARP stipulates how local governments can use the funds. That is the list of what the various types of expenditures could be. And we're going to cover each one of those in a subsequent slide. So I'm not going to go in detail on those right here. But again, keeping in mind that the Treasury most likely will change and that we are staying on top of those changes. We want to make sure that as we're using these funds, that we're using them in a way that will give us a little more flexibility than strictly what is on here, though we're going to want to retain or remain as much as conservative as we possibly can and sticking as closely as we possibly can to these particular items that are listed. And again, we'll get in that in a little more detail going forward. But there's we also provided some additional information for you on some of the released information that was given, but we don't plan to cover that tonight. Next slide, please. All right, so supporting the public health response. This has to do with any sort of service or program that's directly going to be related to COVID or was related to COVID. Mitigation of the spread of COVID. That includes behavioral health needs. So there are folks that are experiencing difficulties on the behavioral health side, and those are being covered as well. And also public health employee payroll. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more because it also covers with another of the allowable uses that's in a future slide. but it can also be for things like PPE, testing, that sort of thing. Next slide, please. It's also for mitigating the economic impact. So this could be aid to workers, this could be aid to families. It's in support of small businesses. And some of the most economically impacted segments have been tourism, travel, hospitality, those sectors, and money can be utilized to assist there, as well as rebuilding the public sector capacity. So during the public health emergency, the negative economic impacts can be used to assist households, small businesses, nonprofits, or to aid impacted industries such as those listed as under tourism, travel, and hospitality. Next slide, please. It's also to serve the most affected communities. This could include preschools, daycares, parks. It's looking at health disparities or social determinants of health, investments in housing and neighborhoods, educational disparities, and also healthy childhood environments. Again, those preschools and daycare types of environments. Next slide, please. This is what I was referring to in a prior slide pertaining to premium pay. It can be for frontline workers, and this would also include the PD who are considered eligible. So it's anyone that performed an essential, any sort of essential work during the COVID public health emergency. And it would be to provide premium pay to any eligible workers that were within a local government or a metropolitan city or county that are performing the essential work that is in direct assistance to the COVID-19 public health emergency. And police officers are considered, under this particular act, are considered 100% devoted to frontline or public health response for the purpose of determining eligible hours worked. So there's a good portion of pay that could be moved in that particular direction. Next slide, please. Also for water and sewer investments, so building or upgrading drinking water facilities and stormwater drain management and lead pipe replacement. Next slide, please. Broadband infrastructure. This is a little bit tricky of one. So it's to invest in broadband infrastructure for under or served areas. It's complicated law within Colorado with anything pertaining to broadband. It's got to be approved by a ballot question. So we're not actually thinking of providing infrastructure. It would be more like perhaps our ability to provide a sub-grant to look into these particular under or not served areas. If you're interested in that, there's a lot more information that we are researching at this point in time, but we don't yet have all the answers on that one as well. Next slide, please. This is the biggie as far as we're concerned, as it pertains to revenue replacement, one of the allowable items. So this particular permitted item is to make up for budget shortfalls that were caused by COVID. So the funding of the projects, there could be projects that were delayed or canceled due to not having funding because of COVID, or that the funds were going elsewhere. And then staff is also right now conducting a much more in-depth analysis to determine exactly what our eligibility is under the Treasury methodology. But let me tell you what we do know at this point. So this is for non-entitlement units of local government, of which we are. We're entitlement. Okay, so this is to state that when you take a look at the 2029 actuals as they were projected from 2019 revenue, you take a look at what those differences are, and then whichever is the greater of that or the average federal growth rate, which is a 1.4%, would be what the city would be allowed to take in as what we would call revenue replacement. That money would come into us, or we could also take a look at the last 3-year average But either way, that money could come into us and it would go into the general fund. Now, once it gets into the general fund, that means it is considered expended from the standpoint of that first tranche, for example. So rather than having to spend $5.25 million within that first 1 year across various programs, we could bring it into our general fund, in which case, at that point, council has a lot more time and flexibility as to when and how that money actually gets expended. We don't risk the opportunity of not being able to expend all of the funds because perhaps a certain subgroup that we're looking at didn't apply as much as we thought that they would, or something actually changed and we didn't actually get the revenue completely expended in one particular area or another. It gives us an opportunity to count it as expended, and it gives us 4 years then to, one, get that second tranche after the first year, and two, to make sure that all that money is directed per you as to how we want to make sure it gets out to the community. Now, that being said, it also streamlines the paperwork that is required. We would not have a lot of paperwork going to the federal government. That paperwork would be what it is that we do internally, that we keep track of to make sure the funds go where you want for them to go, and would also then provide us, again, with this opportunity to utilize the funds as we go forward without risking a possible loss of not being able to expend everything within that first 1 year. Because the last 3 years is a heck of a lot longer than the first year is. And so to have the time to expend all of those funds would be good. That being said, we also want to make sure that we are being conservative enough, knowing that based on what we learned from the CARES Act, that even if they do change the rules down the road and say, yes, you can take it in as revenue replacement, but we do want to make sure that it was spent in the spirit in which the act was put together in the first place, that much like we did with COVID, we would want to make sure we could still answer to that. And so any audit that we may end up getting between now and the next 4 years, we would be in a place of being safe as to how we actually spent this money. We would spend it as intended by the federal government. Next slide, please. So that's a relatively complex explanation of what those are. I want to tell you about the staff recommendations, and then we're going to slow it down a little bit and see where some of your questions might be before we move on. Next slide, please. What the staff would like to recommend for your consideration is that we claim the maximum of that first tranche, so the 5.25 million, as revenue replacement. Again, once we take that funds into our general fund, it is considered expended from the standpoint of the act. However, those funds then will be earmarked by you specifically on how you want to utilize those funds. It just gives us additional time past just that first 12 months, risking the loss of the second tranche. It does streamline auditing and reporting. And then the funds are, again, directed as you all see as being most affected by the pandemic. Next slide, please. So we're going to stop here before we get into the second portion of this, but we'd like your feedback on directing staff, whether or not you want to direct staff on the usage of that first tranche, if we want to do it as revenue replacement. And then from there, we can move on to having you all look at perhaps what our suggestions are to begin with for you to take a look at, and then also get some ideas from you. So why don't I stop it there and see if council has some questions or thoughts on what you might want to talk about with that first tranche and revenue replacement.
Anybody on council have any questions for Ms. Blakeman or other staff members regarding this presentation? Councilmember Madera.
I have a question, I guess. In regards to the first tranche, I'm on board with using it as revenue replacement, but I want to make sure that we're keeping it as close to the intended purposes. And I've seen the ideas that staff put together, and there's a lot of good ideas on there. I guess one thing that I'd like to see more funds attributed to would be to homelessness. I know it's been difficult times in the past year, and for a lot of people, it may be experiencing first-time homelessness. And so I think I know we have the housing rental and mortgage assistance program, which has been great and been helping folks a lot. I saw that there was something on there for parking lot housing and transitional housing, but there wasn't a dollar value attributed to that. So I would really like to see us, look into that further, and perhaps partnering with some of our homeless service providers that are already in the space to see what we can possibly do and how we can use those funds to better serve our homeless population, and see if we can really make a difference, with the homelessness in our city, because it's really getting to a critical point. And this is kind of a blessing that we have here, where we can use some of this funding to start really addressing this issue and make a serious difference.
Councilmember Madera, thank you very much. And if I may, we're going to pull up that that whole spreadsheet here in just a moment. I'm wanting to make sure if council has any questions as it pertains to the replacement. I think that would be helpful for us to know if y'all are good with us starting out in that way, and then we can go through this list. We are capturing your ideas as you're speaking. However, is that all right with you?
Yeah, that works for me.
Great, thank you so much. Does anybody have any further thoughts? And thank you for your first statement there as well, which pertained to us being able to utilize that first in the revenue replacement. I think that's perhaps the direction that we're first looking for, if that's going to work for you.
Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for the presentation, Kathy. I agree with Councilmember Madera on using some of the first tranche to do revenue replacement. Similar thoughts to his on how to do that. I did have a question about the water and sewer investments piece, and does that have to be specific projects, or is it kind of future projects? How does that work? Could it be dedicated to something that we've had on hold that's related to stormwater?
Yeah, it possibly could. That's why we're going to be looking for ideas from you all today. We don't necessarily have the answer on every specific type of project. That's why we do want to hear directly from you what some of those ideas are, so that as we go forward in this next month, that we can really research into it. And there's a website out there that they're developing up, where they're supposed to be responding relatively timely to more specific types of requests. And that's why getting the ball rolling tonight is going to be really important. So if you have some specific projects that you're thinking about, maybe that's what we need to do at this point, is just start into the spreadsheet and be sure that we're circling back before the evening is over as to whether or not that revenue replacement is something that we are getting a direction from you that we can do. But at least we're capturing your ideas tonight to be able to research them further.
Well, oh, go ahead, Roger.
Well, I was just going to ask one clarifying question, Kathy. I thought the
Sure.
water and sewer was aimed at paying for billings that are in arrears for people. Is that not the case?
No, that is one actually that Mayor Huseman had come up with about a month or so ago. That is one option of how it can be used, but it can also be used on infrastructure, some of the infrastructure. But again, it's really kind of iffy. It would still have to be tied into COVID related, but yes, that is one possible usage for it, and that is actually on the list as well. Thank you, Roger.
So I had a specific project that came to mind related to infrastructure for stormwater management, and that's the expansion of 120th Avenue. And I believe the holdup on that is the final amount of funding related to the water district's requirement I'm not quite sure, increase capacity, add infrastructure. There's a couple of kind of things that need to happen there in order to finish the plans for 120th, the expansion there. So I don't know if it's possible to direct funds in that way, but it comes to mind as a project I'd like to see done and is short on funding related to stormwater.
Great, we will capture that. And again, we will, all of your ideas that you come up with tonight, we will be putting into our research hopper. We didn't want to research all kinds of things that we're not even sure where your interests lie yet.
Yep.
John, could you bring up the spreadsheet, and then we can continue the conversations maybe with that up.
Councilmember Alan Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Kathy, for tonight's presentation. But this spreadsheet was, really confusing to me. I'd like a more detailed explanation eventually of different things, but addressing the homeless, where it says the homeless solution, can you make sure also that someone with the city staff is reaching out to Denver area, because right over off of 48th and approximately Forest by Sapp Brothers, one side of 48th is Commerce City and the other side is Denver, and there's a large homeless population, so I think since it's just across the street, can that be included also, that someone with the city staff is reaching out to Denver as well to work together on the homeless solution? Another thing that another concern I didn't see on here is this ongoing concern that the mayor and city council has to deal with one of my constituents and a lot of the parks in the southern area, in particularly Monaco Park and Pioneer Park. At previous council meetings, I had brought up concerns regarding the safety of those residents, and particularly at Monaco Park off of Magnolia. So I would like to see that included on here as well. And also as soon as possible, with the first amount of money that we receive, looking into those gates being installed at a Pioneer Park that we had talked about, and what are some solutions to address the concerns at Monaco Park? I know in the past, the Commerce City Police Department informed us that there's not enough staff. Has it been explored? Can we maybe get a contract with Adams County Sheriff's Department for officers that are off duty to have them help? Because this is a concern since last year that we've had to deal with. So I think it needs to be addressed as soon as possible. So can that be added first of all, Kathy, as well, those two things?
I'm not certain on those. Again, that's something that we can capture and take a look at.
Okay, because like I said, this, especially the park issues. Another question, since it's COVID, does staff have on hand like any future plans? Are we storing any COVID potential PPE equipment in case anything comes up later on? Is there extra supplies on hand just in case, since we don't know? Can that be included too, since it is a possibility?
We can add that to the list of considerations, you bet.
Okay, all right. And like I said, because if that can't be added to this, I would like staff to definitely explore what budget can we get some funding to assist with the Monaco Park and the Pioneer Park this year sooner than later if it can't, because I don't understand why, if it can't be included in this budget, there should be a budget where that can be found, because like I said, weekly, the mayor and city council have to hear concerns and complaints. So, and like I said, if that can't be included, I would like staff to give an update to the mayor and city council what they're going to do about this ongoing issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Noble.
Thanks very much. First of all, I'd like to support the staff's recommendation for the first tranche.
Thank you.
Secondly, I have some questions. In looking at the sheet, when you say external partner and then you say unknown, do you have the names of the external partners?
We do in some cases. In other cases, we do not know yet who they might be. Did you have a question in particular?
Well, I've noticed in some cases it says unknown under the manages program category.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know if you meant the city or an external partner. And I was curious who the external partners are.
So for example, under a small business microloan, for example, that would be, and by the way, those that are marked in yellow are those that we know that there are current grants, programs, or other sorts of funding that might be available. So for the microloan program, of course, we know that there are other microloan programs that are out there. The Senior Resource Navigator, there's several other, for example, DHS Older Americans Act, where the funding might be available as well. But that one's a city, but let's see, where's another external partner?
Provide a business
Yeah, we don't have
acceleration.
we don't have all of who they are, who the unknowns are yet. That was when we gathered the information. Someone felt that this would be an idea that would certainly meet the criteria for these particular loans, but that an external partner has not yet been identified. We would have to research that if it's something that you're interested in as to who those folks might be.
I noticed under financial education, that's something that we voted on previously. And so is that suggesting another grant to the same organization that we gave funds to? Financial literacy?
The financial literacy?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't recall the name of the actual organization that we were talking to, but much like the one that's beneath that with the training for those folks going into a medical field, a communications field, technology field, there are organizations out there that actually manage programs like that. And so from the standpoint of John or Teresa, do you know for the financial literacy, if that is something that is currently in any of our current budgets? We may or may not have the answer to that one directly. Roger might even know. But that second one, there is an organization that we have started a communication with in the event that council is interested in it for the training for information communications, medical technology, that actually does this for a living.
I think it had something to do with Dolly Parton. We did this last year. When it comes to water and so forth, there are expenses that Commerce City has, especially with new development, such as trunk lines, etc. So perhaps funds could be used for payment of the trunk lines that we have to install as our own cost, as opposed to providing funds to South Adams County Water and Sanitation District, though I'm not opposed to that if it's something that we can do that will make the water cleaner or better or whatever the case might be. And then it gets to then we get to economic stability. And I think that's a lot of what the American Rescue Plan has to do with. And I'm thinking about the city's own workers and our own wages in terms of minimum wage and also full benefits. And that we have part-time workers who put in 11 months and have a month off. And so they don't get the full benefits for that reason. And that puts them, I'm sure, in a very awkward situation during COVID or any other kind of emergencies. I don't know what kind of health insurance they get when you're on that kind of program. I don't know what it means for our summer workers. I think we're having trouble finding summer workers, finding people who can fulfill roles that we would like to see covered, such as weed control and so forth. Anything that we can do to help our own workers. And I would consider a lot of those folks to be frontline as well. And that all of them had to be out there working, especially roads and so forth, during the pandemic. They didn't get to sit at home and work off their computers in their own spaces. So anybody who wasn't able to stay home, I would consider to be a frontline worker. And if there's anything we can do to help them with these funds as we go forward, I think that would be a really great use for them as well. I am, of course, supportive of using the funds for a senior navigator. This was a very difficult time for seniors in particular to get help. And as everyone knows, our own council member, Alan Thomas, actually came to the rescue of one of our senior commissioners during the course of a meeting. And I'm personally grateful to council member Alan Thomas that she was able to use her nursing insights to recognize what needed to be done and get that accomplished. But there's a whole lot more seniors around Commerce City who need that kind of assistance as well. So anything like that would be wonderful. Your list is very comprehensive, and it will be good for us to be able to have time to think about these by taking the funds as the staff has recommended. Thank you.
Thank you. We will take a look at some of those BHE types of positions and also run that across the definitions of frontline workers and see if we have a match that's there and get back to you on that.
One quick item of clarification. The Dolly Parton program, that is for actual reading literacy. So that's what was funded, and we have that included in the reappropriation list for authorization or appropriation by City Council. We have not budgeted anything for or appropriated anything for financial literacy. We've talked about the idea, and that will be coming to you later.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Kathy, for the presentation.
Yeah.
As far as the revenue replacement, would it be the whole $5.25 million that goes in right away, or would it be just a part of it?
No, we believe that the calculations, and again, it's something that we are verifying, but we believe that even under the government's own definition at this point, that we're going to be able to take that whole first tranche, 5.25 million, and possibly a good amount of, if not the entire second tranche in that way, which also again just streamlines reporting and analysis and that sort of thing.
Awesome.
Yes.
So I agree, like putting it all in at first would be an awesome idea. Have you thought about doing like a domestic violence, some sort of help for a domestic violence housing? Or I know we have the mental health services, and mental health over the past year has gone down considerably for a lot of people. And I know a lot of people are using those services, but domestic violence has also gone up. Is there a way we can incorporate assisting with that as well?
We will certainly add that to the list to make sure specifically that if it does meet the criteria that they're looking at. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for staff regarding this plan? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation and the update.
Mayor, may I make one other comment, please?
Ma'am.
Thanks. We don't believe that we right now, at least right off the bat, within this first year, are going to have the ability to pull off everything that's on this list. So what we would like to do is take your comments that you folks made tonight, and we will vet them out, add them into this particular list. We will bring them back to you so that you can take a look at. And then if you have, please, the opportunity between now and our next meeting to see if there are some areas that you really want to scope in on more than others, at least for us to start with, that would be great. But at least tonight, it sounds like we have, if we do, the approval to move forward then with taking in that first tranche as revenue replacement, and further conversations will nail down much more specifically where you want to spend it. Did I read that right? You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate the presentation. Next, we're going to have a presentation on the proposed development of a par 3 golf course. Would like to invite Paul Hebnick, golf course manager, to introduce the presentation.
Sorry for the delay there. Can you hear me?
We can, yes,
Okay,
Paul.
great. Thank you very much. Good evening, Honorable Mayor Houston and members of City Council. Tonight's presentation will provide information on a proposed par 3 golf course in the city. The new golf course would be a partnership with Oakwood Homes. And Jordan, if you could advance the slide, please. The purpose of the presentation is to introduce the idea of a par 3 golf course concept and give some characteristics of the course, as well as inform you of the proposed location, provide some details of discussions that staff has had in the past with Oakwood Homes on some of the details, and also lay out some of the benefits and challenges of having a par 3 golf course. Most importantly, your discussion and direction in terms of next steps for staff. You'll advance the slide, please. So just a quick overview, characteristics of a par 3 golf course. Certainly smaller than a regulation golf course. By example, Buffalo Run is approximately 100-acre golf course and is 18 holes. A par 3 golf course is approximately 12 acres and only 9 holes. Also, certainly much easier for golfers to play a par 3 golf course than a championship 18-hole course. So it would appeal to golfers who want to play a shorter course, be a walking golf course only with no golf carts allowed on the actual course itself. And because it's a easier course to manage, it would be ideal for junior programs as well as beginner clinics. You could advance the slide, please. So to give you an idea of the proposed location, so you can see there Reunion Marketplace there on the corner of 104th and Chambers, and just north of that in the Second Creek corridor area there's you can kind of see where the proposed golf course would be. So it's west of Chambers, and it's approximately 1 mile from the existing clubhouse at Buffalo Run. So it would not be directly adjacent to Buffalo Run Golf Course, but on the west side of Chambers Road there. Next slide, please. So just in general, the proposal on the table is for Oakwood Homes to be responsible for, number one, donating the land needed for the par 3 golf course. As I said, it's that area there in the Second Creek floodplain area, as well as constructing the actual golf course itself, building the fairways and the green complexes, etc. And also providing water for the project in terms of tap fees and approximately 57 ERUs. Altogether, if you wanted to put a dollar figure on this, and again, just a kind of a ballpark figure, it could be upwards of $1 million that Oakwood Homes would be responsible for and is agreed to. Next slide, please. If you'll advance this. Okay, here we go. So the Commerce City responsibilities. So maintaining the golf course itself, going out to the par 3 on a daily basis for mowing the greens and the fairways, tee boxes, etc., as well as operating the golf course, which means having golf operations staff out there to answer the phones, check in golfers, run programs, etc. And of course, all of the expenses related to the maintenance, related to the operations, and ongoing capital repair and replacement expenses as well. And also, you know, a commitment to expanding junior golf programs in the area. Next slide, please. Some of the benefits and challenges, huge benefit, obviously, Oakwood covering the cost of the initial development and construction of the golf course. Certainly, there would be many more opportunities for player development programs, as well as expanding the junior golf program. This amenity would be family friendly, adds another recreation opportunity for citizens of the city, and would also be easy access for seniors, new residents, who there's a development there, an age-restricted development just to the west of the proposed golf course. Easy access for those folks that are purchasing homes there. And also would be great for some specialty golf events, hole-in-one contests, etc. Some of the challenges, there's an annual estimated subsidy of between $100,000 and $150,000 per year. Obviously, that number is based on the revenues that the par 3 golf course generates versus the additional expenses to maintain and operate the golf course. I would say we've estimated the revenues a bit conservative, perhaps, at approximately $40,000 a year. That number could go up. But again, a conservative estimate of revenues would be approximately $40,000, and the maintenance and operation to be about $195,000, of which probably one of the biggest expenses would just be water for the golf course. Another challenge is that the location is not directly adjacent to the existing golf course. As I stated earlier, it's approximately 1 mile from the existing clubhouse, which creates some challenges with getting staff over there to maintain the golf course as well as operate it. And again, this would be a commitment by the city, an ongoing commitment for future capital repair and replacement expenses. Next slide, please. So this is really where we would like to get some direction from City Council. We do believe that there is a value of having a par 3 golf course in the community. The question obviously on the table is the value that brings, the ongoing value, worth the ongoing investment? And we would like to, if the answer is yes, then staff can go back and get into further discussions with Oakwood Homes about next steps. And if the answer is no, then Oakwood Homes obviously would like to know that as well. So question really is, how would City Council like to proceed at this point?
Councilmember Hurst.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's a interesting idea and potentially a good one. One of the questions I did have though is you called out a couple times that this is in the Second Creek floodplain, and obviously because of drainage and water and the way golf courses operate, that those two could operate cohesively, if you will. But is there anything else? Say we decide not to go the golf course direction, and this might not be a question for you, Paul, but just anybody who can answer this. Is there anything else suitable to build in a floodplain like that? Meaning, along the creek. Obviously, there's limitations on what you can build. Is there anything else that would replace a feature like a 9-hole golf course?
Not really. I mean, we have trails in floodplains. And so you could put some types of recreational, uses in a floodplain, like a field, that type of thing, but you're not allowed to build buildings or anything, vertical that might impede the floodplain.
Thanks for that, Roger. Yeah, and I think one of the key things that I'm looking at there is I would obviously think that this golf course would need to be designed, with the floodplain in mind. The folks that would be doing this obviously know much more than me about that type of work. But I think that would be one thing that is a benefit in my eyes, is that if designed and managed appropriately, this could actually be a benefit to the floodplain, and kind of larger events be able to take on more water and be able to kind of slow the progress of a flood, if it were working its way down the creek. And so I couldn't tell you exactly how those designs differentiate, but it definitely could be done as a benefit to the floodplain as a whole.
Councilmember Alan Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Paul, for the presentation tonight. Had a few questions. When you say they would donate the land, does that mean so the land would actually belong to Commerce City?
Ultimately, yes, is the quick answer to that. Yes.
You say ultimately, so it would, yes or no?
It would take some legal, I don't know exactly how the land gets dedicated in the legal process, but currently the land is owned, my understanding is by Oakwood Homes. So we would have to go through the legal process of the land being donated, or I'm not sure what the legal process is exactly.
Okay. And I was just curious, what does ERU stand for in the presentation? You said ERU?
Right, so that's those are standards of water usage. So a residential unit, and maybe someone who has a better understanding of exactly how the complicated world of water works can better identify this. But in layman's term, my understanding is that a developer has a limited number of ERUs that they are allotted for development, and in order for irrigation water to be dedicated to whether it's this project development, they have to spend in a certain way part of the allotment that they have, and that is, they have a limited number of those. So bringing that to the table is critical to the project.
Yes.
So yeah, go ahead, Roger.
It's an equivalent residential unit. So it's the amount of water used by a single family home. And they have a calculation of how much water that actually is. And the developer has to buy those ERUs. And so it's an actual expenditure that they have to incur in order to provide that water. And yes, Paul's right. They're dedicating that as part of the donation to the city. So ultimately that would be owned by the city.
Okay. Thank you. And then for this other part, would we have to have like an additional clubhouse as well, or would they use the same clubhouse that we have for Buffalo Run?
So part of the challenge of the physical golf course being approximately a mile away from the Buffalo Run clubhouse is that it would need to be staffed. I'm not sure what the building itself would look like, especially in comparison to the existing clubhouse. My guess is that it would be much, much smaller, really just a big enough building. Maybe, don't quote me on this, but we'll just say maybe 300 square feet or 500 square feet, there would certainly need to be restrooms in there, restroom facilities. There would need to be a shelter in case a storm came by and you had a bunch of junior golfers out on the golf course. There would need to be a bit of a check-in area so that people that came to use the facility would have a way to pay money to play. And you'd also need to have what I would call eyes on the golf course. You would need a staff member there that could observe what was going on to make sure that, you know, somebody's not riding their ATV or their motorcycle across the par 3 golf course. Those are the types of things that do require some kind of building that's got electricity, that's got running water. There would probably need to be an IT component, you know, so that we could have a computer there to check in guests, that kind of thing. Those types of details, we haven't gone too far down the road yet.
Okay, so is that possibly in the projected 100,000 to 150,000, or is that going to be an additional cost?
So that would hopefully be part of what Oakwood Homes would be bringing to the table in addition to the actual golf course itself. They have committed to having some kind of structure there. If the structure that Oakwood Homes would propose or agree to build does not necessarily meet what we feel the needs are, there could be an additional expense to the city. I'll just throw this out for example. Let's say they want a 100 square foot building, but we think we need a 500 square foot building. There would need to be some negotiation there and potentially an additional expense. Again, we haven't quite gotten into that level of detail yet.
Okay, thanks. And then one last question. So would the city need to hire more staff, or do you think you have enough staff now?
I know we would need to hire more staff in order to make that happen. Potentially one full-time junior programmer, as well as additional variable hour employees and the expense related to those hours. So, especially the VHE hours, those are included in that original figure, the 100 to 150,000.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Paul, for the presentation. I love this idea. I think it's a great use of the land and would love to see an expansion of our golf course. I was curious, some of Councilmember Hurst's questions kind of prompted me to think about, is it possible to insure a golf course in a floodplain? I know that insurance for structures is a challenge in floodplains, if not impossible, and I would assume we would want to carry insurance in the event that we did have a storm event that maybe would impact a golf course.
I may have overemphasized the floodplain concept, just as informationally. A large portion of the existing Buffalo Run golf course is also in the floodplain. So I don't think that in any way is a deterrent to the project.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got for now, but I'm definitely interested to see this develop further and kind of what comes up along the way in your discussions with Oakwood.
Okay.
Councilmember Noble.
Thank you very much. I guess under benefits and challenges, well, let me go back first. Could you give us context for this? My understanding is that Commerce City owns some land in this area, and then they're involved some trade with Shea Homes and et cetera, involving the other golf course. Is there any background that you could give us on this property?
I can provide some limited background, but honestly, most of the information that I have is from word of mouth.
Then maybe Mr. Tinklenberg, can you fill us in with your 20 years of experience? Did it happen within your time?
Well, I'm not sure which property you may be referring to, but the land that we own in that area is either the golf course property itself, or there's some drainage structures that are nearby for regional detention, stormwater detention.
I thought there was some land that was traded with Shea Homes way back when, which enabled the golf course to enlarge their parking lot and add some other structures at Buffalo Run. But that we originally owned land over near 112th and Chambers, the city did.
Again, land that we would own in that area would be golf course land. I'm not aware of any other land. The land that we used for expanding the parking lot, we purchased that. So that's why I'm not sure of what you may be referring to. This particular land is going to be part of the development that they're working on right now in terms of the entitlement process for the adult living area. And so it will be dedicated as part of the floodplain dedication that occurs when they plat the property.
Then let me talk about that instead. So when you have a floodplain in Commerce City, would Commerce City have approved homes where this golf course is planned?
A small portion of it may have been buildable for homes, but since the majority of it is in the floodplain, you cannot build homes in the floodplain. So part of it, the land dedication, while it comes out of their total transaction when they buy land from the Fullenwider family, it does need to be dedicated for floodplain. Where the land that I'm talking about that could possibly be used, it would be towards the south end near the future 106th Ave. And that would be used, well, part of it would be used for right of way, and then a small remainder would be available for this building that Paul was referring to and the parking area. So I'm not sure really, if they could get one or more homes in that area. It would be a small area that would be buildable, actually.
So it's beneficial then to do the golf course to Oakwood
Yes.
as well. It is a gated community that's planned. Will the gates go around this golf course, or will this golf course, will it be inside of Oakwood's project, or will it be exterior to Oakwood's project, external to Oakwood's project? And secondly, and more importantly in some ways, who will own the golf course? Who will own it and control it?
So their proposal is for it to be dedicated to the city. So the city would own and control it. And in answer to your first question, my understanding is it would be outside of the gates. So in other words, people would be able to drive up to it, use the check-in that Paul referred to, and be able to use the par 3. That's my current understanding anyway, and we certainly will get more details once we get further into it.
And two final points. One of them is that the city of Aurora does not allow golf courses any longer because of water constraints and concerns about future droughts. So for example, the hotel, the giant hotel over there at Tower and 25 wanted a golf course, but they were only allowed a pool. So I think it's something for us to keep in mind also. What is our responsibility in terms of sustainability in our community? And the final point is that I sat in on the comprehensive plan discussion with residents last Thursday, and they asked for more trail linkages. So having a linkage for Second Creek that runs all, that could take people all the way up to the Bison Ridge Recreation Center, in fact. might be something that's actually more important to residents. So that's ultimately the question that we answer, which is more important to the residents, to have a 3-par golf course there. And please know, I am from a golfing family. I'm a hacker myself. I'm not really very good at it, but our family has golfed for decades. And, you know, I like golf courses, except there are constraints and things that we need to be concerned about that we didn't necessarily worry about in the old days. And that even includes, you know, the type of products that are used to cut back on weeds and concerns for people who live around golf courses and so forth. But I think it's just something we need to look at. Is a golf course, another golf course, actually something that residents want? Thank you very much.
Sure. Sure. To answer one of your questions, the trail is planned to be extended through that Second Creek floodplain all the way up to the recreation center. And, you know, our long-term plan includes those trails. And as developments are occurring, then that's one of the things that we require, or, you know, funding towards building those trails. So yes, extending the trail is a high priority for us. In terms of, you know, relative importance of the two, it's tough to answer that question. You know, trails are definitely important and will be done. The benefit of the par 3, as I understand it, I'm not a golfer at all, don't even claim to be a hacker. So is that it will enable training youth, you know, to about the sport and to be able to participate in the sport. And you know, that is a long-term concern for golf courses, is that, you know, there are continual people entering the ranks of golfers. And so from that standpoint, you know, whatever importance you would place on youth development, that certainly would fulfill part of that need. And as Paul mentioned, it allows someone to just quickly have a round of golf, you know, on a par 3, and then be able to go on their way for the rest of their day. So the other comment I would make for your information is that the expenditure numbers and the net amount that we would need to subsidize it is a kind of a worst case, very conservative scenario. Oakwood, based on their par 3 that is down in Green Valley Ranch, thinks that revenue will actually be stronger, and that therefore the subsidy will be much less. But again, our staff took a very conservative approach to it. Thank you.
I do want to add that I am all in favor of youth development, and golf is an expensive sport as well. So is it the kind of sport that our youth will be able to play the rest of their lifetimes? And is that an investment that we're interested in making here? And I still am curious what the community wants in whether they want us spending money, additional money on operating a par 3 golf course. Thanks.
Councilmember Madera.
Yeah, you know, I do see value to this, you know, not only aesthetically for the city, which is, you know, one of our goals, but you know, the youth development piece is huge. Like, I wish, you know, there was something like this when I was growing up. I didn't start playing golf until, you know, I was well into my 20s, so still a hacker. But you know, if I had something like this growing up where I could learn how to play the game right, I think it would have made a difference. And I think it's a great game, and you know, teaches people a lot. You need a lot of patience, and you know, you got to be consistent and dedicated. And so, you know, I put my nieces and nephews in these programs and try to get them exposed to sports. And so I do think it's a great idea. I think it'll work out being in the floodplain where, you know, it'll be designed with that in mind and having that cohesiveness, which is something that we lacked in a lot of our planning in the city, you know. So I think it's important that, you know, incorporating these elements into our development is really important because it does help with the watershed, you know, with the design it right. If you look at the pictures, they got some ponds there that I'm sure double as retention ponds or detention ponds. I always get those confused. And you know, it is an expense, but I think if it's done properly, it could bring in more revenue than we think. Because a lot of times people don't have, you know, 4 hours to kill to play a whole round of golf in 18. So, you know, they'll go play a par 3 that they can do in under a couple hours. And so I think it'll be a nice amenity for the city that people will really enjoy. And, you know, I just think aesthetically, you know, golf courses are really nice to drive by and live around. And I think it's something that people will enjoy. And, you know, I think it's worth the investment, you know, in the city and in our youth. And so, you know, I'd like to see this continue and interested to see where negotiations and where city staff ends up.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, so I wanted to make sure, so there would be parking at this golf course as well, correct? To Paul?
Yes, that is the plan. Yes, that is.
Okay, because I just, you know, my concern is definitely the accessibility for, you know, youth and seniors. A mile is a long way, you know, when you're carrying clubs and everything else. I'm actually really excited for this from the junior standpoint, but also a senior standpoint. I mean, could we get a senior league and get seniors more engaged in events like this in the city? So, you know, I do get where Councilmember Noble's coming from, though, with making sure that it is something that the residents here want. But from my standpoint, I think it's a great use of that space to actually have something that's bringing in revenue and is a benefit to the residents, and the possibility of a junior program. And like I said, maybe a senior league as well. So I would be in support of it.
Councilmember Hurst.
Yeah, thanks. Just to kind of follow up on my initial comments, I'm still in support of it. I think, you know, if the city could focus on, you know, in the discussions with Oakwood and just the golf course in general, accessibility, you know, we talked about with our other parks around the city as we build and develop or upgrade old parks that, you know, it's time to upgrade them. We want to make sure that we're making this accessible to everybody. And I think golf can become a more accessible game as long as, you know, it's taken into consideration. I'm sure, Paul, you probably follow a lot of the same golf stuff that I do. There's a lot of accessibility work happening in the game now. And I think that's something that I would like to see us focus on. Natural landscape. The beauty of a par 3 is you don't really need a large fairway because you really shouldn't be in the fairway a lot. And so if we could focus on keeping the rest of kind of the outlying part of that golf course in its natural state with prairie grasses and everything else, with kind of, you know, walking paths and very thin fairways, if you will, that would be, I think, a very nice living environment for those living in the area as well. And then didn't want to interject, but I was thinking kind of like we have at Pioneer Park with the batting cages or the concession stand. The size of that building is probably all we would need at something like a par 3. So not a very large building, has bathrooms, and it has maybe like a small pro shop, if you will, what they would call it, a golf course, but it would be more like a walk-up window that you would pay your fee. I lived at a par 3, a 9-hole par 3 in the desert in Nevada, and it was so natural. It was just kind of a tee box and a green complex on each hole, and there was really just desert in between. And it really fit the landscape well, fit into the community well, and was walkable in 45 minutes, and it was $10 to play. And so it was always busy because I feel like the community used it as a great asset. And of course, during the short stints of rain in that climate, it very much became kind of a wet course, almost unplayable at times. But that's what it was there for. It was there for the watershed and kind of the floodplain. And so I thought, I'm kind of thinking back to that example and the way that it was designed and kind of built into the landscape. It really felt natural there. It didn't impede on the landscape, if you will. And I think that could possibly happen with this type of golf course as well. And so I think with those things considered, which seems to be part of the plan, just by the location that was selected, I would be supportive of this. And I really think it could become a benefit if it's done appropriately.
Any other questions or comments regarding this? Seeing none, I too fully support this. I've been excited about this opportunity since the first time I heard about it. I just have one request that we put it under lights. You know, the most popular golf course on Hawaii is on Hickam Air Force Base. It's the Kealoha Golf Course. It's under lights and allows people to play at night. When you look at the popularity of places like Topgolf, where people go out there and play until, you know, all hours of the evening, and gives them an opportunity to go out and exercise and get their game going after they've gotten off work. You know, we have beautiful evenings here in Colorado. The weather is perfect, and I think the opportunity to get people out there, you know, where you're not concerned about, oh, it's, you know, the sun's about to set, so I can't get that round in after golf. So I think the opportunity, especially with directional lighting and everything, to have this as a centerpiece and really start to draw people, not just the residents of Commerce City who want to partake in this sport, but also people from our neighboring communities, and get them to come into the community and start spending some of their money in our city instead of us constantly going to their city to spend money. So fully look forward to seeing how the negotiations go and how quickly we can get this underway so that we have something nice to look at as you drive up and down Chambers Boulevard instead of the dead trees that have been out there for years. Seeing no other requests for comments, Councilmember Hurst, I presume you just haven't lowered your hand. We will move on to the next presentation, which is going to be a comprehensive plan City Council and Planning Commission Community Visioning Workshop. Would like to invite Jamie Rice, planner, to introduce the presentation.
Well, hi, everybody. I was just waiting for Joshua Kuntz to get on the line. My name is Jamie Rice. I am the planner here spearheading the comp plan update. And tonight we're having the visioning workshop for our city council and our planning commission. So I would just like to introduce Joshua Kuntz. He is with our hired consultant, Housel Levine, and he will be doing the presentation and the workshop with you tonight. So I'll hand it over to Josh.
Thanks a lot, Jamie. Really appreciate it. I want to make sure that everybody can hear me, first of all. All good? Okay, and then I need to share my screen, I believe. Get this set up.
Josh, if you don't mind giving a moment as we bring over the Planning Commission to participate.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Just let me know when everybody's in, and I think I'm all set as long as everybody can see my screen.
Josh, I think we have everybody moved over. So if you want to go for it, my good man.
Okay, thank you, sir. And I want to say thank you to the mayor, city council for having me tonight, and good evening to the planning commission as well. It's really good to see you all again and to be here with you virtually tonight. Tonight, what we're doing is a visioning workshop, but I have a few things I want to present to you before we get into the fun part of doing some mapping together. So again, my name is Josh Kuntz. I'm with House of Levine Associates. We're the urban planning and urban design firm tasked with your comprehensive plan, and then following that, working with these fine engineering firms on Parks Rec and Golf Master Plan, a Transportation Master Plan, and an Economic Development Strategic Plan. Tonight, I'm also joined on the line with by my colleague Mika Schweitzer, and between the two of us and then two others in our office, we're kind of the core of the Commerce City team. And we also bring in all of our full team out of Chicago and California as needed to work on the project. Tonight, what we have planned is I just want to go over a quick review and update for where we are on the comprehensive plan project, just touch on the project steps and project status, give you a brief update and preview of the existing conditions report. This is the kind of sums up what we've been working on so far. And then we'll go into our visioning workshop, and I'll touch on next steps. So for project status, I was here with you all back in step one, project initiation. We did some kickoff meetings that were a lot of fun, talking about issues and opportunities in the community. And since then, we've worked through steps 1 through 4 here on your screen. Although community engagement in step 2, that kind of continues throughout the process. But really, we're wrapping up step 4 with the existing conditions report. So we've done a lot of community engagement, conducted a market and demographic analysis, and it's all going to be summed up in this report. The reason that I mention this is because this is kind of the part of the project where we make sure that we have our heads on straight before we start doing the work of planning and thinking about where we go in the future. So like I said, it presents the work completed in steps 1 through 4. It's a summary of existing conditions. It kind of presents some takeaways from all the community outreach that we've conducted, identifies issues and opportunities which are based on talking to the community, some on the ground field work that we conducted in Commerce City. And just want to stress at the bottom there, this is going to be a nice looking document, but at this point, there's no recommendations and no plans for the future. This is just a summary of existing conditions, issues, and opportunities in the community. So this is kind of our final checkpoint before we get into the process of actually starting to vision and plan for the future in Commerce City. And you'll be seeing this soon. So just a few takeaways. You know, we heard a lot from the community about the significant sort of industrial base that's has a heavy influence on the core city and kind of along the western edge, land use conflicts and incompatibilities in certain neighborhoods, the differences in the north and the south, and probably almost everyone we talked to identified to a certain extent that there's some sort of a north-south divide, whether it's physical or sort of just a mindset. So that's you know, just in a nutshell, a few of the things that we started to hear as we completed this first phase of the project. So tonight and late last week, as Councilmember Noble just mentioned, we're really at a turning point in the planning process. We're going from getting an understanding of where Commerce City is today, making sure that we have a good jumping off point, and we're starting to think about where the community wants to go. And that's when we get into step 5, the community vision, goals, and objectives. the vision really, I'm going to go back to that. I'm sorry. The vision really is kind of a higher level aspirational statement that encapsulates where the community wants to go, like I said. So one way that we sometimes talk about it, if you look there in the logo, Commerce City 2045, we're thinking out long-term, 25 or so years in the future from when the project started. And one way that we sometimes think about the vision is if we are able to stand there in 2045 and look back, what are some of the things that we would want to see that have been accomplished in Commerce City as a result of the comprehensive plan. It's not to say that this is a crystal ball and that we know what's going to happen because we're doing a comprehensive plan, but the vision wants to identify some of the things that could happen out of the comprehensive plan. And then your goals are, and your objectives are the more actionable steps to get there. So one of the examples that I often use for a goal is the goal of a 5-minute mile. I may have that goal. I may never reach it, but it is something that I can work toward, and that the action steps that I take to work toward that 5-minute mile, they're worthwhile. And they still help me in my long-term vision. So what we're doing tonight and what we did with the larger community last week is we conducted a visioning workshop. And leading up to this workshop, there were some boards out in the community. These were posters at the Civic Center, Paradise Island Pool, Bison Ridge Rec Center, Eagle Point Rec Center. I think these are going to be around a little bit longer, but we asked the questions, the future of Commerce City would be better if we did what? Where do you live or work in Commerce City? What's the most important topic for the comprehensive plan to tackle? So this kind of starts to get at the, to turn the page from thinking about the issues in the community and start to think about where the community wants to go. And then we ran through this exercise with the community last week. We had a nice sized group and we broke out into 4 small groups to start to get some ideas on a map. So these are the maps that we made together as in our small groups. And we'll make these available in larger size on the website. But we came up with some big ideas for each of the small groups. So here in group 1, we talked about commercial that was serving the whole community, attracting people from south to north and vice versa. Talked about amenities that keep people playing and shopping in Commerce City. Talked about paths and lighting around the parks and pedestrian connections from the city to the arsenal. In group number 2, some big ideas: beautifying and increasing safety within the city during the night with pedestrian scaled streetlights, increasing healthcare facilities and providing some more local healthcare options. Again, improving sidewalk connections, sidewalk widths, implementing things like traffic calming, increasing entertainment options, maintaining and upgrading park facilities. In group 3, we talked about, again, connections through the arsenal. There was a proposal for a scenic drive through the arsenal, better transit across the city, improving RTD routes, creating a bus or trolley system that operates citywide. And then group 4, using trails to help residents connect without a car, more trees in the core city, more retail to keep dollars inside Commerce City, branding for the Old Town area is what they were calling it in this breakout group, but for the core city, setting up the area to be charming and increase the potential and community feel. So you can see in these work maps that people were starting to think, what are we going to do to get there in 2045? What are some things that we can do, and not focusing just on the issues? And we moved the groups from the core city to the up into the northern range and up into the growth area to make sure that we got comments across the community and get really a citywide focus. So what I would like to do tonight is conduct a version of the same workshop. We're going to take a look at one of the same types of maps, gather around a virtual map table, think about us all gathered around in a large room, and start to think about where we want to go. So again, we're focusing on the future and ways to address issues rather than simply identifying issues. And I think I talked about this a little bit out of order, but what comes out of this visioning workshop is a vision statement that House of Levine will draft, a higher level aspirational statement describing what the community hopes to achieve over the next couple decades. And that will be reviewed with staff and the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. And then we'll start to draft the goals and the objectives for the comprehensive plan. So this step in combination with the first 4 steps really starts to take us into the next stage of the comprehensive plan. Are there any questions before we go to the mapping exercise? Okay, then I'm going to share my screen here, or switch my screen share. I just want to confirm again that everybody can see my screen. All good? Am I good, Jamie? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we did this with smaller groups, but I think this will also work with a larger group. What we want to do is take a look at the legend here, take a look at the colors and the legend items. We are focusing on what we can do long-term for the city's residential areas, commercial areas, industrial areas, transportation and mobility, parks, open space and recreation, community facilities and infrastructure, community character, arts and culture. And we used these specific colors to identify. So as we're talking about different things, I'll use the map tools to try to mark up the map accordingly. I'll try to get some of your ideas down on this map. So I think we are going to be using the hand raise function. Is that right? To get people to chime in? Okay. So what we want to do is just start to think about ideas that we can draw on the map and kind of open the floor to ideas, what we want to see in Commerce City long term. And I think this dovetails nicely with some of the first items on the agenda that I was hearing earlier. You all were talking about flood plains and natural areas, potential areas for golf courses, areas for new housing, as you went through some of the previous agenda items. So we can start to mark up the map together. Does anyone want to chime in and talk about what are some things that we need to see in Commerce City long term?
Councilmember Noble.
Thanks very much. I reiterated this on last Thursday also. I didn't participate, I was just an observer, but there was a really genius idea that my group came up with that was a big idea that isn't reflected on the slide for that group, but it was for a cultural district that would sort of begin where the light rail is, go along 72 over to Highway 6 and then down. And that cultural district would make use of some of the old facilities that are in that area that no one is using any longer for museums, theaters, etc.
And Councilmember Noble, you said that was near the old library, right?
No, it's near the light rail.
Oh, near, yeah.
Light
over there,
rail,
okay.
yeah, and then going east. And then down Highway 6 to, I don't know, around 64th or something. And then back around. They also needed lights and sidewalks in that area. But no, that's a little, I think that's too high. you're taking in the industrial area. It needs to come down. That's too small. But that's a general idea. That's a general idea, Josh. Just, it's right.
Sounds good. And we'll dial this in.
It's actually, yeah, you're too high at the end and not low enough at the bottom. But hopefully someone can help with that, because it is on the slide. It's group 1. It is on that one. The map is. I thought it was a great idea. Because, and there was also someone in our group that I'm sure a lot of you know his name, because he is a busy developer in Commerce City, and that's Jim Harmon. And one of the points he made was that this is not likely an area that will attract retail. And so it's really a great area to use for this purpose. Oh, it came down to Fairfax Park. So down further past 68th, down to 64th. Okay, I'm done with that part.
Anyone else want to chime in? Some things that you've been thinking about for the future.
Councilmember Hurst.
Yeah, there's a energy easement for the power lines that runs from Tower Road, just east of Tower Road, all the way down 104th beyond Highway 2. Because of the easement, because of the power lines, nothing can be built under them. And so just thought it'd be a good idea to have kind of a path that can connect, like a bikes or multi-use path that would connect the eastern portion of the North Range all the way down to beyond Highway 2. And that could be like eventually worked into the expansions for E470 and kind of connect regionally with all of the other pathways that are in development.
Give me just a second. I need to confirm what color I was going to use for that. I think orange, right? Blue. Okay. And so that runs from right around here, and it runs all the way west along 104th.
Yes, sir. So just east of Tower Road is where it stops, and it goes. The easement at least goes all the way beyond Highway 2 and just along the main energy lines.
Okay, and you all can keep talking while I'm listening, and I got Mika listening on here too, taking notes. So is that about right, council member?
Yes, sir. I mean, I don't want to get too technical on you, but it is on the south side of 104th.
Gotcha. Of course.
But yeah, it's maybe 300 feet from the 104th roadway, so not very far south of the roadway.
Okay, let me just move that down here. Okay. Anyone else want to chime in or start thinking about the future here?
Commissioner Douglas.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. When it comes to transportation, if you look at on Tower Road, all along Tower Road, connecting to the spur off the light rail, which is just below where it says 81st on Tower Road, that little curve there, just to the, well, I guess it's further down because of the light rail. Actually, you can't see it. All we can see is Pena Boulevard. But just straight down Tower and a light rail connection, a spur connection from that sector of 61st and Pena. I mean, not farther down, but I'm saying where the rail line curves as it heads towards DIA. That would go all the way up Tower Road. And then it could either go up Tower and then they're doing it in the future plans is going to be Buckley, High Plains Parkway. And that could actually follow that all the way up to the Prairie Center. And then since we don't, as far as hospitals, they could go up to Platte Valley Medical Centers as well. So that cost could be shared by Commerce City, Adams County, and Brighton. So you could just do where the curb is. You don't have to go further down. Just illustration as far as a line.
So you're talking
there.
about like kind of right up this way here?
Yeah, all the way up there. And then
I kind of want to use my straight line, sorry.
And you can actually have it curve up when it gets close to 112th and kind of ease over to the west, because Buckley Road goes straight up and under E470.
So it would curve over along here?
Yeah, right underneath 470 and straight up. Because in the southern area, we have the RT, the light rail, the commuter rail down there. And for future transportation, Commerce City could do just like Fort Collins and have their own bus line of electric buses that would just serve Commerce City residents and kind of move people from the north to the south. And by utilizing which roads are already there, Quebec to 104th to Tower going south. And then, you could even go down to 56 and around the joint venture with Denver. But I think we need to think about our own transportation within, and that is to have our own bus service.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else want to chime in?
Commissioner Yost? Mr. Yost?
Sorry, I had myself muted there. 80, I would like to see 88 resurfaced or expanded. 88 and 96, both of those roads are full of, both of them are in need of repair, either resurfacing or torn up and expanded. I'd also like to see 120th expanded into 4 lanes, and the intersection at Buckley and 120th expanded and allowing for a left turn lane and a right turn lane on all sides of that intersection. That's it.
And what were the two, Commissioner, what were the 2 intersections you mentioned?
There was only one intersection, and that is 120th and Buckley. That Buckley Road gets a lot of traffic to Prairie Center.
It's already happening.
And it's going to get, and Lennar is right across the street. And so Lennar is adding to that also. And then I'm pretty sure we just passed a plan for additional homes up there.
Okay. How about, you were all talking about the potential for new golf courses or preserving, things like preserving floodplains and a little bit earlier. Are there any areas where we'd want to see new parks, new open space, new recreational areas?
Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. My comment wasn't specifically about recreation areas, but this might tie in. I'd like to see access to the refuge from 96, a tie-in to the scenic drive that goes through the arsenal from that end as well. And then as far as additional recreation areas, I think this is in the plans at some point, but I'd like to see us pursue an outdoor pool at the Bison Ridge Rec Center. As well as additional outdoor sport courts, if you will, tennis type courts.
Okay, anyone else? Anything on parks and recreation? Thank you.
Councilmember Madera.
This wasn't for Parks and Recreation, but I was going to suggest having a transportation district along Colorado Boulevard between 74th and 68th Avenue. So kind of like mixed use type residential and small commercial.
Thanks, Councilmember. And I missed exactly where you said that. Did you say along 76th?
On Colorado Boulevard by the light rail station, between 74th and 68th.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. And I just want, I know that I'm taking short form notes here, but Mika is also taking fuller notes on the meeting as we all talk here.
Councilmember Hurst.
Yeah, Mayor, if you feel you can, please jump in. But it's because it's definitely an idea I heard from you first. But a location for a central park. We talk about trying to bring the North and the South together all the time, and not any great large locations for a truly centralized park besides maybe the Arsenal. But I was thinking maybe like 96th and Highway 2. As you just get east of Highway 2 beyond the neighborhoods, possibly finding a place for a central park as that development occurs. I think that might be as close to center point with developable land that we can get, but any opportunity for a centralized park that we can, really come together for city events like Concert in the Park and things such as that would be, I think, a fantastic idea if we can find a good location. So my suggestion was just east of the development that you see right above the blue box that says roadway improvements and resurfacing. So just east of that neighborhood there.
That'd be right about right here?
No, I'm sorry, just on the other side of the neighborhood.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Right there.
There we go. Okay.
And then for transportation, we've talked about this in the past, but with the train being such a hassle at 104th and Highway 85, essentially having an off ramp off of I-76 onto 104th, where currently we just have a bridge that goes over it. The off-ramp would have to be kind of tucked right next to the Bobcat dealership that they have there. But also an on-ramp would be just on the other side of that bridge there onto I-76. So more accessibility that avoids the train. As the population grows up north beyond 30,000+ just on the north side, that becomes a very key route for access on and off the interstate. And with the train really not slowing down, that could be a good opportunity for us.
An arrow approximately to that area. It's kind of about somewhere around here, right?
No, 104th and I-76. So up north more, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So that's yeah, I think you're gonna have to slide up a little bit. So okay. Yeah, where it splits off, does the wishbone, it's to the right spur of that, yeah, where it meets 104th. And staff knows about that request. Mayor Huseman and I have been talking about it for a while now.
Commissioner Douglas.
Thank you. Now exactly where you had the first one where Craig was talking about in the south, that would be off of 74th onto 76. It will be access from the current Colorado light rail station. Currently, you can get on 74th and take 76 loop to get on 76 going south, but there is no on-ramp to go north. And that's always been a hassle too. People leaving our city from their daily jobs and want to head north. And it's bottlenecked, it always bottlenecks on Highway 6 and 88th and 96 lead up to 76, but we have no on-ramp to 76 off of 74th.
So would you say 74th on ramp to go north toward 76?
Yes. Right where that arrow is, the little black arrow where it says the cultural district near 72nd Street. That's like 70, right below that where it says 224. 224 is 74th Avenue. Right there.
Right. Okay, there we go.
And then when you talk about future recreation and aquatics, as far as standalone pools in the northern area, as the city goes, I think it would be great if there is land dedication for future recreational, another rec center or aquatics from the developers, like they do schools, to set aside land because it would benefit them as well to have those amenities in their areas within their development growth. And right now, things are so tight right now, it would have to be development that's happening to the east of 112. It's in our growth pattern. I'm sorry, our growth boundary within Commerce City in the Northern Range. So anywhere from, yeah, so it has to be annexed, but it would be in the northern area to have land to dedicate for recreational infrastructure and standalone aquatics. And the last one would be bike parks, like BMX tracks, out off-road biking, bicycling. If we had parks and those could work well in the south and the north.
Yeah, those are increasingly popular in cities all over the country. We even, there's even one here in Chicago now, and we certainly don't have any topography. So, very popular feature.
Josh, I think that we are getting some really good information about transportation, and I love seeing all the blue on the board. But I'm hoping that maybe we can talk a little bit about commercial availability and vacant lots within the commercial realm, and maybe where we imagine commercial nodes within the city. If that's, I know that that is a topic that the council talks about a lot. And so I think it might be something that we can start to think about as well for the next portion of this.
Councilmember Noble.
All ears.
Thank you. I am interested in 2 entertainment districts where residents could congregate, restaurants, movie theaters, etc. One is at Tower and 104th.
And you, what did you call that, council member? A recreational entertainment district?
I just called it an entertainment district, not recreational, entertainment district, restaurants, shopping, etc. Movies.
Okay, and where was the second one?
The other would be in the industrial area at 96th and Highway 2. Now, I know that there are industrial plants there, but this is visioning. And as was noted by residents last Thursday, we will be in a major shift by then in terms of industry. And I think that would be a good use of space and would be right in between the north and the south for an entertainment district, which would be at 96th and Highway 2, right at the sort of the edge of the Arsenal.
Yeah,
On top, yeah, it would be where the industrial is. So the arrow should be on the industrial. And this is a really important question that she asked earlier about identifying where we want commercial. And I think that's the conundrum. How do we identify commercial when that's not a land use? When there is all housing that has been built along a roadway that should have enough room for commercial on it, but doesn't, then I don't know what we do about that. I guess we could take out the houses, which is another way to look at it. A grocery store complex should be at 104th and oh man, it's not Potomac, it's just a little bit east of there. So it's above the pink. It's above the entertainment district box that you just made. And close to Highway 2, there's actually room in there for a grocery store. Maybe there's empty land there. And no, it'd be way further down, Josh, way down by the blue line. Yeah. And then another grocery store at 104th and Tower.
So there's yeah, not every corridor can be commercial, but if there's a corridor that you want to see the character change over time, there are tools that cities can use, like zoning changes and things to start to over time, you know, looking out 25 years, where you can start to encourage different types of development.
Okay, that arrow, the arrow in the grocery store is kind of in the wrong spot. It goes too far down, but it's all right where it is. And then further over on the east side as well.
And you said this one is at Tower on 104th, right?
Mm-hmm. We're
And
in the entertainment district area.
And Josh, if I may interject very quickly for council and planning commission's benefit, this may help provide some context as they're thinking this through. In our existing comp plan, we have what are, I would say, 9 identified true commercial land use or designated centers that range between, I would say, employment center, regional community center, a community commercial center, and local commercial center. You'll find at least 4 of those identified areas along the existing 104th Avenue, one at U470, 100 and Tower Road, another at Chambers and 104th and Highway 2, and then at Highway 85 and 104th. We have another location identified off of 88th Avenue and 76. And then we have, I would say, pockets of local commercial center, commercial land use designations along the Chambers and 120th corridor, E470th and 120th, just to help provide you all with some context.
Okay, 104th and Tower, Josh, for the grocery store.
Yeah, right here, right?
Where the turquoise lines are intersecting, correct. And then one at 120th and Chambers.
Grocery store here. And what types of, are these all, like what types of grocery stores are we talking about here? Are we like major, like a major chain, or more of a small boutique?
I'm not identifying them. Depends on the amount of land that's available. We're short grocery stores.
Okay. Entry that not to Chambers, sorry. About over here, approximately over here, right?
Mm-hmm. We're also short restaurants, but are restaurants something you put in a visioning plan? That seems to be something quite immediate.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, would you think that those would have a home in the entertainment districts, or do those belong somewhere else?
No, that's fine too. Okay.
I mean, I think that is something that we're seeing, more and more people want to be able to go out. They want to be able to eat and find entertainment in the same spot. So areas with things like movie theaters, as well as restaurants and a shopping experience all in one. That's, I think that would certainly fit the bill of an entertainment district.
Okay, and we need a hospital. And I don't know where in the heck you'd put that.
We don't have to, yeah, we don't have to assign every single thing to a specific
location. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Alrighty, great. A hospital.
I was going to chime in on what Jason was saying just a second ago. One thing, when the existing conditions report comes out, you'll see some maps that look like this, where we don't have your future land use map in the existing conditions report, but one map that I think is helpful. Give me just a second for these to load here. That's not the right one. Is the sorry, dealing with a little glitch here. Is the existing land use map that's in that report. So part of our work in the first stage of the process was to go through the community and identify existing land uses throughout the community. So you can see where there are some of those commercial nodes existing, and of course, vacant sites for potentially new land uses, and then your growth area up here is largely agricultural. So this will be a helpful map to reference as you are thinking about this and taking a look at the existing conditions report.
What is that light blue, all of that light blue, what does that represent? It looks like blue to me. I hope I don't have color problems.
Right. The very light blue over here is the South Platte River.
No, light blue throughout the map. Is that green? Is that pale green? Is it pale blue? What is it? What is it?
Green is agricultural land or open space.
Okay.
Councilmember Madera.
Anyone else want to chime in on the?
So here's for the commercial area, I struggle a lot. And, if I could put it anywhere, I'd want to put it somewhere more central, because a lot of the locations that we identified, along the 104th corridor, there's no denying that there's a geographical divide. So, for someone who lives like where I live on the southern part of the city, it takes me longer to get up there than, say, Cherry Creek or Northfield or, even Thornton or, downtown Denver, places that already have existing commercial. So, I've always felt that having something more central where people can get to it from both sides of town. So like something in between Highway 85 and Highway 2 on the 104th corridor right there would be a lot more central to people from all parts of the city to have something commercial or entertainment district. And right now, that's all industrial.
Okay. Yeah, so something that kind of brings both the north and south together in the center of the city.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we really need to move towards if we want to bring the city more together. It's all about location.
Okay.
Councilmember Madera, this is Councilmember Noble. I'm not interrupting you. I just want to, are you thinking the same? So that was the same thing I was thinking about, an entertainment district at 96th and Highway 2. Sort of similar, it's already built out, but what do we do? So it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I just think, like the 104th corridors already built out, in terms of the roadway and capacity. And it's easier to get to 104th, from even further west, like say Thornton or North Glen. And so having something kind of right there on that major roadway, from Highway 85 that already has high traffic area. It's easily accessible from, both parts of the city as far up as, Brighton and beyond. Makes it a prime location to really develop that east side of Highway 85.
Yeah.
Going, as far as Highway 2.
I think we're on the same page here. There's always the 2 train tracks. It would be smack in the middle of the 2 train tracks, whether it's at 96 or 104th. But at least it would be in the middle, kind of. Thank you, Councilmember Madera, for letting me interrupt you for a sec.
This is great input.
Member Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a little bit of a divergence from where we're at right now, but I'm thinking kind of long term, it would be important for us to annex all of these little pieces of Adams County properties throughout the city, just from a strategic point of view. And it might even offer the opportunity to create zoning where zoning doesn't exist as far as the city is concerned at this point. So that exists not only in the northern part of the city, but there are opportunities for those to annex lands in the core part of the city as well.
So kind of start to fill in the feathered edges and the gaps throughout the city and annex those spots.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe even with a priority on pieces of property that are surrounded on all four sides, where it just makes kind of perfect sense to go ahead and annex those in.
Okay. Anyone else?
Commissioner Yost.
Thank you. Council Member Grimes, I just want to comment on your suggestion, and I couldn't agree more. There are a lot of, I couldn't agree more with that. That's not my suggestion, however, I'm suggesting a pedestrian mall between 72nd and probably 72nd and 73rd on Monaco. So as you walk down the Save a Lot is up there. There's all kinds of small businesses. There's, it's just a real centralized part of the city. And I think we could, a pedestrian mall, but, we would give additional support to these small businesses along that avenue, and even invite new businesses in. I think at the very center of Monaco and East 72nd Place, there's a large walkway there. It just seems perfect for like an old town Commerce City. That's all I got.
Yeah, great.
Commissioner
And
Douglas.
that fits with a lot of what we were hearing from the community about new pedestrian connections generally, north, south, and east, west in the core city.
Yes.
Anyone else?
I'll wait till you're done there. All right.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay, no problem. Back up, well, in the area down there, you're gonna start seeing, we may see industrial start to leave between 96 and 88th along 76. And any land that comes up, the city should look at acquiring that land for future development of what everyone has been talking about. So city can get some land grabbed, and potentially, sell it to future developers. That would be great. And if we go further to the east, up on 104th and E470 for future growth, it would be nice if we had a outlet mall in that area. Brick and mortar is going to come back. No,
Sorry,
just
could
to
you
the
repeat that location.
Yeah, to the east. Keep going to the east on 104th. 104th and E470.
Gotcha. We'll have to move the bikeway. Just post it here. Nico, move it and I'll drop. And you said this is also a land opportunity over here?
Yeah, just to the left where it says bikeway. That's 104th, just north of 104th. And where the outline of the bikeway, that's Himalaya. Just on the east side of E470. So that could be an outlet mall. And the last one would also look at opportunity for entertainment district. Maybe you just And just catty corner that to the east, northeast would be like a Top Golf. I haven't heard anyone bring up space travel or high-tech center. I know that we're supposed to have a high-tech area there on Tower, but we're seeing a lot of warehouse buildings go up, logistics, but really nothing concentrated on high-tech industry. And so even that corridor there, just where the outlet is, there could be an area over there for high-tech as well. I know Adams County has spaceport and they're looking at space flight, but if we had an area where those companies could operate out of, that would be great.
So would you say that that's kind of this area along Tower right here? Where I'm
No,
drawing
that'd be up near where it says Flat Rock Regional Training Center between 120th and 128th to your right. You have to get right above the entertainment district where it says Top Golf.
Gotcha. Oh, sorry. I'll retry that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hurst.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of good ideas, and I think we do need to start talking about, how we sustain ourselves financially. A lot of talk about industrial moving out. Between 96th and 88th, that's mostly transportation, and not industrial manufacturing. And transportation has significant growth in the forecast for the next 25 years in Colorado. And I don't foresee it going anywhere. I actually, with the retail market changes, see that there's going to be more wanting to come to our area, not necessarily Commerce City, but just generally our area because of the access to the interstates. And so I think we should, also be discussing what happens in that situation, because I think everything that we've put down is fantastic. If we can get commercial, obviously that pays taxes, but a lot of what we're looking to support for our residents does not provide the tax generation that it would need to kind of be self-sustaining to pay for itself as a service. And so we're going to have to continue to attract businesses into areas that are going to be beneficial for their business to move to. And so we should be addressing that as well.
Yeah, I think you're right on about the transportation industry in general. The trucking is more important than ever with the way that retail is going. Surface transportation, as well as air. Any other areas that we need to touch on? We haven't spent a lot of time down here. There were some ideas about ways from the community, ideas about ways to activate the area around Dick's Sporting Goods. I had in my small group, I had a pretty good discussion about things to do around Fairfax Park.
Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we move on to that, Josh, can we add the need for a police substation in the north, potentially a standalone building to really bring the police closer to the population as it grows in the north? I don't have a specific location in mind for it, but probably somewhere along the Tower corridor.
Yeah, and that's something that I heard. I conducted a focus group with the police department. That's something I heard from them as their travel times north to south. If they need to respond to a call up north and then take a suspect back down south, it can be quite a journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any other comments? Anything else you want to see on the map?
Councilmember Madera.
Yeah, I think we've had this for a while already in our comp plan, but that area around Dick's Sporting Goods was kind of like office/retail. And there was a proposed hotel there at one point. I think the office and retail still makes sense there, or similar type use.
Thank you, Councilmember. And activation around around stadiums. There's great examples of lively neighborhoods around around sporting goods or sporting events parks.
Councilmember Noble.
I would invest in the neighborhoods around Suncor in terms of lights and trees, sidewalks, clean the roads. I don't know what that all falls under. I guess lighting.
Yeah, I would call that streetscape improvements or
That's good. I like that. Josh.
public realm improvements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be good. And then Derby area, an art district. For artists.
Sometimes it's just
an artist's district.
In terms of the public realm improvements, just jumping back to that, it's you see that all over the country where some of the most walkable older neighborhoods on a nice street grid, but they also tend to be lacking some of those things like you were just saying, street trees, good lighting. So often the most well-connected, physically well-connected neighborhoods need some modern improvements. Anyone else want to chime in? Oh, we need to draw the line to the Derby district here. Running out of space to draw lines.
Hey, Josh, as we start to wrap this up again, I'm just thinking of more things to get some of the conversation going. And I'll pose this as a general question, and we can have City Council and Planning Commission answer as they wish. But I think one of the bigger questions that we've been seeing in this comp plan update is the question of how does the council feel about residential next to industrial? Is that something that we want to see in the future in terms of combining not the uses, but combining the land uses to make them, a little bit more combined? Or is that something that we want to separate a little bit more with landscape buffers? Is there a general feeling that anybody might want to bring to the board here.
Councilmember Madera.
Yeah, that's good that you bring that up. I think that's a big problem that we have currently, where it's kind of sporadic in our planning on, what's industrial and what's residential, and sometimes the industrial is in the middle of the residential and vice versa. And so I would like to see a better job of kind of keeping compatible uses together and having a little bit of separation, whether it be by the roadway, where on one side of the road you have your industrial, and then on the other side you have residential, and kind of use the landscaping to really buffer the two and make them kind of transition a little bit more seamless. Because I think of just looking at Stapleton, right? They have a prison in the middle of their community, but the way that they're able to kind of transition from residential to industrial to like a jail, it's not as imposing as some areas here that we have in the city, where you just have adjacent uses and there's not a real kind of rhyme or reason that we're kind of organizing. Okay, this is our industrial district, this is residential, and we're kind of separating the two and keeping like uses together.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that they need to coexist, and there's certainly areas in the city where they are in close proximity. So over time, some policies that dictate how new development and redevelopment can occur can start to make that start to happen.
Councilmember Alan Thomas.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think it'd be, possible to combine industrial and residential. What I think we'd have to take in first account of the safety of the residents first, to make sure it's safe for them and environmentally safe. But I think eventually it could be, possibly incorporated. And then I just wanted to add in on another line, that area along Dick's soccer stadium, incorporating possibility of another grocery store, and then possible curb and gutters need to be installed along Colorado Boulevard and 64th up to the RTD station. And then, incorporating townhomes and condominiums as well near the train station on the west side. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We'll try to get those on the map here.
Councilmember Noble.
Condominium train.
I'd like to go back to the industrial for a minute. And the only way I see them coexisting is if there is a step down in terms of intensity, so that there are multiple levels of intensity before you get to residential from industrial. Heavy industrial cannot be next to residential, although it is, but it can't be next to residential. So you would need step down to medium industrial, light industry, office, or commercial, and then to residential. So those buffers exist as well, not simply trees or walls, because that won't be adequate.
Yeah, absolutely, land use buffers. When we're talking, sometimes when we talk about industrial, what comes to mind is, a power plant or a refinery, but there's also tech, tech warehousing and things like that are a much different story. And those are areas those are types of uses that are starting to occupy some older industrial areas in communities with with old industrial buildings that could be repurposed and stuff like that.
I would consider warehouses to be heavier industry than light because of all the trucks coming in and out and all of the exhaust. So I wouldn't want to put warehouses by homes. I can see converting warehouses into homes.
Sure.
That happens a lot, but I wouldn't want warehouses by homes.
Councilmember Hurst.
All right, so why aren't we talking about 25 years out? I mean, 25 years, there will be no exhaust on a truck. So we just have to find a way. All I'm trying to get at is I'm not saying that heavy industrial belongs next to residential by any means. I agree. There's got to be some type of buffer. But I just want to make sure that, you know, we're getting these ideas of completely flipping over industrial side. We wouldn't be able to pay our own bills as a city if we don't find a way to continue to provide or continue to have zoned places to do business. And again, transportation is growing to over triple the size that we have today in Colorado is projected in the next 25 years. And so it's going to likely play a role everywhere, not just in Commerce City, but everywhere in Adams County as we move forward.
Councilmember Madera.
Yeah, I just had a question about like the tech warehouses. Are you talking like, you know, server warehouses or?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking more of like sort of like a business campus where there's, you know, assembly, light assembly, or, you know, light warehousing as opposed to kind of like a industrial, you know, like a trucking yard or something like that.
Some
I
probably
think
more
there's
like your mixed office / warehouse, and you know, you might have a box truck or something coming out of there. Not like heavy semis, like logistics.
Yeah, and I think just like Councilmember Noble, just like you were saying, there's definitely you said step downs, different intensities of industrial are definitely appropriate in different areas.
Yeah, and I think those transitions is, you know, what's needed in the city is, you know, try to keep that light industry, you know, be part of the buffer.
I think we're coming up on about an hour of talking about the map here. Are there any is there anything we're missing on the map? Anything else that we feel we haven't discussed?
Councilmember Hurst.
Sorry, I wanted to add a quick fun one. I think we should build a music venue on top of the landfill off Tower Road once it's done. That'd be a cool view.
Councilmember Noble.
Councilmember Hurst threw me off. I think I just forgot what I was going to say. Oh no, nuts. Oh boy. I guess it will come back to me. Maybe not before we end here, but I guess it will come back to me because I can't remember what I was going to say at this moment. What have we overlooked? Oh, education. In terms of technical schools and colleges.
And is that community wide? Do you have an area in mind?
Well, you know, since we have this area that's up there beyond the airport, that seems like a good place for people to be who aren't there overnight. Granted, it's not convenient, and I, you know, I agree with Councilmember Madera that it's a long part of the problem is it's a long drive between north and south, and there are people in the north who go into Brighton instead of driving to Northfield, for example, or driving south. That Brighton's far closer or Prairie Center is far closer, but such is the challenge of a city that was created around an arsenal. The other idea is to actually have a road, Buckley Road continues through the arsenal. Or, yeah. Buckley Road continues through the arsenal, straight down to 65th. Or 60th, straight down to 60th.
Let's see if I can find Buckley here.
Just visioning. Is this a time to be talking about sustainability and electrification and, or, you know, other alternative energies, that sort of thing or is this strictly doing land use stuff?
No, absolutely. This is anything. Yeah.
Oh no, we could be here all day.
All night.
Oh, yes, exactly. All right, then. Aim towards alternative energy resources in the city. Expanding alternative energy resources in the city.
And are you thinking solar, wind, or what other types?
Solar, wind, hydrogen, whatever somebody might think of 30 years from now that hasn't been invented yet. Alternative energy. Energy that is alternative to oil and gas. Natural energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely something the comp plan can tee up, recommendations to explore alternative energy.
But I think, Josh, we might have thought of other things if we had known this at the beginning, that we could include those kinds of concepts as well. In fact, the form that I have for the DIY workshop calls for the participants to identify 5 challenges. And the city council hasn't been asked to complete that form. And I really think that that's something that we should do as well, is go through that process.
We did, you may recall, we did an issues and opportunities workshop with city council at the start of this process. We did identify some challenges and issues out of that workshop.
Okay.
But
Misty
again,
brain.
I'm not
Thank you.
certainly-
No, that's okay. Thank you. My mistake. Thanks.
Commissioner Douglas.
Oh, I was just gonna chime in on the energy. Future energy would be green energy. Instead of going for that way we're going away from fossil fuel. With hydrogen made from green resources. So it's green hydrogen. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yeah, certainly not confined to just land use, transportation, parks, open space. One thing that we didn't touch much on besides the cultural district is arts and culture. Any thoughts on the community character, arts and culture?
Councilmember Hurst.
I think there's a perfect location for an amphitheater in the Second Creek open space. A small natural amphitheater there that could be utilized for cultural arts as well as educational opportunities. That would be on Landmark in the Second Creek open space up north, just above the grocery store in red. Sorry, south of where you're at. So that grocery store there. Second Creek open space right there has like this hill built into the road that a natural amphitheater might work perfectly there. Just an idea. It's already dedicated as a future park location, and just thought that might be a good use of that land to keep it natural with the open space.
Any other thoughts?
Councilmember Noble.
Dark sky, implement dark sky lighting throughout Commerce City.
Yeah, good. Definitely seen some communities adopt dark sky ordinances that we've worked in, and it can be pretty effective limiting light pollution.
Councilmember Hurst.
Apologize, sir. Left my hand up.
Councilmember Noble.
I don't have kids or grandkids, but can somebody jump in who knows what youth in this area need? I think the only thing that came up was maybe BMX and talking about entertainment districts, but is there anything else that we need to entertain our youth? I think one of the problems that can occur and when we have parks and street racing going on is there's just nothing to do. But I don't have any good suggestions, just commenting.
Some more activities, add recreation opportunities for the younger generation, next generation.
And at night, I think, Josh.
Nighttime activities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this map is really filling up, and I really appreciate all the good input tonight. This is, of all the maps at this point, this is the most populated. It's a lot of good input.
Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have an idea on how to engage kids. I think we kind of forget about this sometimes because a a lot of kids are involved in sports in school or music or the arts or whatever in their schools, but there are plenty of kids who don't make high school sporting teams, and rec sports for kids tend to end after middle school. And so I wonder if just a programming change to extend rec sports into the high school years might be a way to engage some children who are not otherwise engaged.
Good. So programming, getting into programming.
Commissioner Yost.
This is not a question or a recommendation. This is a comment. I think the city has always, the city now is divided into two sectors, but I think the city has always, I grew up in Westminster, and when I would travel to Commerce City, the one thing that would always amaze me is how close industrial and residential live. And the other thing that was present to me when I traveled here was how scattered that was. So my point is that I think Commerce City has always, not always, but had an underlying beginning of commerce mixing with residential. Now, the northern sector of the city has kind of followed other norms, such as Brighton or Northland or Thornton or things like that. But my point is that I think we need to deal with the inequity of Derby and the heart of Commerce City's the inequities that live in the southern part of our city. And I for one don't know how to deal with that. I don't know whether we could tear down buildings. I don't know whether we could shift things around. But the inequities of Southern Derby, Commerce City are how do I say this? I think they're keeping our reputation in the Denver Metroplex at a lower point than, say, Thornton, Northland, Brighton, Broomfield, things like that. And guys, I got no solution for you. I only have an observation. I don't know how to fix that, in other words. But I do believe we're on the right path. That's all I got.
Councilmember Madera.
Yeah, Councilwoman Noble brought up the street racing. Maybe having a racetrack where these kids can go and have somewhere to do it. Up there, like on the northeastern side of the city, that hasn't been developed yet. Could help alleviate some of the problem.
Josh, I just want to give you a heads up that I do think we're nearing our allotted time here, and so we'll probably want to start to wrap up soon.
Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to respond to Commissioner Yost's comments, and I don't have a specific solution either, but a concern, it's been a priority of mine to figure out how to improve the core city in a way that the residents want it improved. But it's also a challenge in terms of maintaining a cost of living that's attached to the core city right now. How do you make those improvements without pricing people out of their homes or completely redeveloping neighborhoods, like we see in Denver, where you end up with $1 million townhomes where, historic neighborhoods used to be. And so I agree with you, and I think it's something we need to keep working on. It's just, how do you do it and keep people in place?
Yeah, and if I could respond to both of those comments too, I think that that's why it's so important to have a current comprehensive plan. It's a great tool to, when you're looking at an area that's been established, like the commissioner was saying, for so long, with industrial near residential, and the comprehensive plan can look long-term and kind of establish a path that will guide not only this council and commission, but future ones, and start to establish, bump things along in an incremental way toward incremental change over the period of a long term. So it does take a long-term effort to change patterns that have been established over a long period of time, if that's what the community wants. Any other final thoughts on the map? I want to be cognizant of my time here.
Commissioner Douglas.
Thank you. I just wanted to also say, as far as recreation and maybe other entertainments for youth and that are in high school that don't participate in the baseball, those that are the norm. I know down in Highlands Ranch, they have indoor skydiving. Kids can learn how to do that. The golf course, the parking lot's been expanded, and maybe in the future to the west side of that parking lot, maybe we could put in a putt-putt golf course. And for those kids who love to drive, what about an electric go-kart track or so, or maybe working with NASCAR or something and building a test track where kids can learn how to drive race cars in the northern area. But down in the southern area, we talk about expansion and bringing in new homes, like what Del West is doing. For the surrounding community, maybe there should be a policy of freezing those property values. It's not property values, but the taxes. So the taxes won't go up, grandfather them in. So any growth that happens within a dog track that increases the property value, their tax portion would be frozen until they decide to sell. And then the new owner who purchased those homes, they will be subject to the new taxes. And that way, generations to come can, if they inherit the home or so, they're not going to be subject to that tax increase in the property. So if we're meaning to add value and preserve quality of life, and also grow in those areas, we also need to look at changing our policy to make sure those homeowners don't get pushed out because of the new market rate in those homes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Noble.
I also wanted to incentivize green energy business in Commerce City. I think it would go a long way to reverse our image. So it wasn't just making use of green energy, but also incentivizing green energy industry and businesses and tech.
Good. Businesses that follow the green industry sector, support businesses.
Or industry themselves. I mean, we can make these things here ourselves.
Sure.
We have a huge industrial corridor.
Yep.
We can incentivize businesses that take the planet's future into account.
Okay, great input.
Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also just like to point out that while we're working towards new energy solutions, it's important not to marginalize people who can't afford those types of energy solutions at this point. And so being mindful that we still need to have a cheap, reliable source of energy to provide for residents who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford it.
Yeah, sometimes the new technologies are they're the most costly, so don't want to limit anyone's ability to stay here. Any other comments on energy or any other aspects of this?
Commissioner Douglas. Commissioner Douglas.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I would just also want to say what has been brought up. I know we're talking about the dog truck, but maybe also what we need is a college here. You can even be a satellite from Metro State College. The successful cities and towns that have had colleges, that really will enrich the youth and give them an opportunity where they don't have to leave their environment to experience the college experience. So that's much needed. If you can find a home for that, that would be great. Thank you.
Josh, that's going to have to probably be our last question that we take as we're running over time at this point.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you to the mayor, council, and planning commission. Really appreciate all the feedback here on the map. As you can see, it's quite colorful and quite marked up. Go back to my full screen here. So next steps, the opportunities for input are still out there. There's still DIY kits out there in the wild that can be taken by anybody and done with any local group that wants to do them. I think those will be available for a little bit longer as we wrap up the visioning process. Engagement on the website, you can continue to do a mapping exercise on your own via the website through map.social. And the next steps, the existing conditions report is in review with staff, and then we'll go to the comprehensive plan advisory committee and the technical advisory committee for further review before being posted to the website. And the next deliverable for the comprehensive plan project is the vision statement, goals and objectives, and or preliminary goals and objectives. And we will have these Miro boards available for review on the website also. So the map boards that we just worked on. Are there any final questions about next steps of the comprehensive plan or what's next for the process before we go? Well, again, I appreciate so much that you had us here tonight. And if there's any other feedback you want to get to me, you can send it directly or through Jamie. Would probably be the fastest way to get it to me. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your time this evening, putting that together. Thank you to our planning staff for your work on this, as well as thank you to the members of the Planning Commission for joining us and providing your input this evening. Next on the agenda is our reports. We'll start with Mr. Tinklenberg, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Few items here. We're working on the 2022 budget and just really getting into that process. Also, the 2021 reappropriation proposals will be brought to you. We anticipated doing it June 21, so next week. However, there's some items that are not ready yet at this point. So rather than bring piecemeal to you, we thought we would wait with that until July 19, which would be our next regular meeting. And then I sent you an email earlier this evening with the link to the website that shows the crime data. And we'll continue to publish that link in the city manager update. And then one other item that came up in the process of our discussions about reappropriations, but does not need to be included in the reappropriation ordinance, is we have had situations in the last several years in the winter where when there is a blizzard, 96th Avenue becomes hazardous because people try to drive it and get stuck. And even though our staff puts out barricades, people move the barricades or drive around them and get stuck. And so this past winter, we rescued a number of people that were stranded. And several of those, I think it was a total of 7 that ended up staying in our Bison Ridge Recreation Center overnight because they had nowhere else to go. And so from a physical hazard standpoint, it is a dangerous situation because if we lost someone there, it'd be pretty difficult to find them. So what we're proposing to do is we have money budgeted within the capital improvement program, and it was originally designated for future warning towers. We're proposing to use that instead to install gates, storm gates on 96th Avenue at each end to prevent people from attempting to use it. So unless you have concerns with that, I'll simply transfer that money. That's within my authority to do so, but I wanted to advise you of the situation and our proposed solution for it. And that's it for immediate items to report on. I'll have more next week. So thank you.
Before we move on, does anybody on council have any comment regarding moving money from the warning siren towers to having gates on 96th Avenue? Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. Just because we did actually have a use of the emergency warning sirens last week, I've heard a number of comments about how inaudible the actual announcement is. And so no issue moving the funds. I think that's an important addition to have those storm gates. But if we could also take a look at why it's so hard to hear the actual warning coming out of those speakers.
Yeah, the problem there is wind conditions. In a storm, there's going to be very few people who can hear the announcements. And what we have found when there are tornadoes, tornado warnings that go off, often people walk outside and look at the sky, which is what you're not supposed to do. So ultimately, we think it's going to be more effective and a better use of the money to go to an alert system that goes out to cell phones and landlines and go away from the warning towers.
Thanks, Roger.
Sure.
I'll tell you, my least favorite day of the month is the first Tuesday of every month because we are constantly inundated with what is that and why can't we hear it? And that's something that has not changed in the 7+ years that I've lived in my house here, is the fact that those sirens go off and then the next thing you know, we have a voice that's out there that is completely inaudible and everybody rushes to social media to ask what's going on, why is it this way? So if we can come up with a solution that will adequately inform residents whenever there is a disaster and they need to be prepared, and make sure that they're prepared in a safe manner as possible and avoid people running outside trying to figure out what it is that's being said and what they need to do. That would be great. My only concern with moving money from the towers is, are we going to delay getting improvements to that emergency notification system?
Our long-term proposal is to move away from it completely. Chief?
Thank you, Roger. Appreciate the comments. I think it's important to note that the warning tornado system that we currently have is old technology, as Mr. Tinklenberg mentioned. It is not designed to be heard from inside your residence. It's designed for people that are in the outdoor space. Those speakers are not high fidelity. They simply operate on a, I'm trying to remember how it was described to me, on a decibel level that is above the wind speeds that we're supposed to be experiencing. So when you hear it without those accompanying wind speeds, it sounds like, as the mayor just described, it wasn't designed for that. So our current code red system is in place. That system is only designed to grow and expand as we start to venture into these sort of new technology ideas. But the current system is outdated. And quite frankly, we're kind of working with the vendor on what we're going to do with the existing towers, take them down or keep them in place. So there's no function on that to those towers that tell us when something's not working. There's no way to back check that. We simply get that when we activate the system, and if it works, residents tell us it doesn't work, and that's when we know that it's bad. So again, it's not ideal technology. At the time we purchased it, it was what everyone is using, but most municipalities are moving away from it. Hopefully that answers any questions.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate those comments, but I'm going to ask again, if we move this money away, are we going to delay improving the system for the residents?
I don't believe so. If right now, when we are experiencing tornado type conditions, the National Weather Service sends out a message to cell phones in the area. So the only impact would be as if a resident was outdoors and didn't have a cell phone. They could potentially be impacted. That is always a case if we don't have a layover system, meaning that we have outdoor towers along with the electronic signaling, along with the messaging on television that comes across, or a 911 ringback system. To produce all four of those would be very cost prohibitive.
My response would be that when we've figured out an adequate solution, that would be an appropriate time to come to you for an appropriation of money. Right now, that money is just sitting there, and we don't know, what that anticipated solution will be. So,
Thank you for the answers. Any other questions for Mr. Tingleberg? Councilmember Hurst.
This is tangential to the topic, but I feel like it's the technology being utilized today for emergency warning systems, at least in the field that I work in, can be reliant on 5G accessibility. It's ability to pinpoint a small focus group, geofence, similar to what a tornado warning could be, is going to become more heavily reliant on 5G. And I just happened to see on Nextdoor the other day that somebody in Green Valley Ranch walked out in their front yard to somebody striping up their grass with marking paint. And she asked, well, what is this? Oh, you're getting a 5G tower right here in her front yard with very little note. I mean, he said, well, you didn't get the letter in the mail? And she's, of course, you're just reading this on Nextdoor. So no question and answer followed, just a lot of crappy comments. But have we been contacted about 5G, and is there a plan for installation within Commerce City, because when we were at the FCC 2 years ago, it's a little enlightening to hear that they don't have a ton of intention on following the same permitting process that we have for everything else.
I have not heard of anyone contacting us. I see the city attorney has logged on or unmuted himself, so maybe he knows.
I've appeared. I don't know about specific contacts, council member. I do know that we have in the last few years put in place land development code provisions relating to small cellular telecommunications facilities, including in city right of way. I believe those are intended to apply to 5G, but can follow up. So when an application does come through, I know those cover a number of different things. With that, however, the ability to regulate has been nearly entirely ripped away from local governments by the FCC and by the state legislature in pretty much nearly unanimous votes. So in the past few years, and so happy to get more information on what our regulations are to you.
I appreciate that, sir. And that was kind of my worry, is exactly what you just said, Mr. Sheasley, is that it doesn't really matter what our regulations say. And really what I heard at the FCC is not only are they coming in, but they do it in a bulk permit situation where they may try to seek permit for 25 of these 5G towers based off FCC guidelines, not our city guidelines.
Any other questions from Mr. Tinklenberg? Seeing none, we'll move on to Mr. Sheasley.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 3 items. The first was to note that council's request for an ordinance or resolution regarding funding for schools in 27J and Adams 14 will be coming to you as an ordinance next week for appropriation of funds from the general fund for that purpose. The second and third items come from the municipal judge. The first relating to fireworks. He wanted me to pass along a request that I believe makes sense to consider an emergency ordinance next week modifying the penalty. We have the minimum penalty of $500 and then $1,000 for fireworks offenses. That gives him no leeway. He has asked for a modification to that to allow him to grant alternative sentences to juveniles as opposed to imposing a $500 fine that the city would have limited ability to collect on, particularly regarding a minor. And so I wanted to raise that. It is a very simple fix that we could have on the agenda next week. It is also something that we could consider after the July 4th holiday and grant him that authority to modify afterwards. So didn't want to rush that on you, but wanted to bring that up tonight, but we can certainly delay it until after the holiday if there was a lot of discussion.
I think that's a worthwhile change to it and would welcome the emergency ordinance. Does anybody on council have any objections to that ordinance come before us next week? Seeing none, please bring that forward on the 21st.
Thank you. He'll be quite pleased. And then this last from the judge was a request for council to issue a request for a veto letter, a letter requesting that the governor veto a particular bill relating to outstanding judgment warrants. I don't have the bill number available at the moment, but it restricts the city's ability to issue warrants for people who do not pay fines and or acting to suspend driver's licenses through the state agency. That will severely limit the city from being able to collect on delinquent payments. And the only recourse then is to send those outstanding fines to collections. And so we could put that on admin business for next week if council is interested in debating it at the time. I believe that Ms. Goff concurs that a letter might not have much effect, but would be worthwhile sending on that item.
Does anybody on council object to that being an administrative council business item next week? Seeing none, please bring that one forward as well.
That is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody on council have any questions for Mr. Sheasley? Councilmember Hurst.
No, I do not. I apologize. That was my hand up still.
Thank you, Mr. Cheesley. Do any council members wish to make a report? Councilmember Grimes?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to report that last Saturday was National Get Outdoors Day, and I had the pleasure of joining Friends of the Front Range at the Wildlife Refuge for a special announcement about a challenge grant from federal government in the amount of $1 million per year to the Wildlife Refuge for ongoing operation and maintenance efforts. And so that was very exciting. And I just want to report that back. Councilwoman Smith was also able to join me, and I thank her for being there.
Councilmember Noble?
I testified on behalf of the city today at the Water Quality Control Commission. I'd like to thank city staff for helping prepare the documents. I think it was really important that we were there because it turned out that Commerce City came up numerous times in testimony from others who were participating. So thank you all very much. I think it was important to be there. And I also made note that there was a letter from Mayor Huseman that I was only summarizing. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for going there to testify on behalf of the city and the city council. Councilmember Alan Thomas?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to thank the Commerce City Police Department and Chief Nichols and Officer Garcia. Last Friday, I had the pleasure to do a ride along with Officer Garcia. So I just wanted to thank them for their hard work and seeing a whole nother perspective of the city. So just wanted to say a shout out to the Commerce City Police Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members wishing to make a report? Seeing none, we'll move on. I do not have a report to make this evening, so we will wrap this meeting up. We'll see you next week for the regularly scheduled city council meeting to include an emergency ordinance at the request of the municipal judge, as well as other items of business. Look forward to seeing you then. Have a good night.